Good evening, everyone. We're live from the Donatorium with another episode of The Fat Minute. I'm joined tonight by my co-host, Taste the Rainbow, BVJ.
Hello.
We're joined tonight by special guest, Makes Mouths Happy, Jake Small.
Hello. I was wondering what mine would be.
And I am, of course, Don John, melt in your mouth, not in your hand.
Ew.
I mean, some people like it that way.
Exactly. It's 2020, Blake. Don't be judgmental.
Yeah, come on, man. Get with the times.
So I want to thank Jake for joining us tonight. You can find Jake on Twitter at KangaShark, and you can also find him on Twitch at KangaShark as well. What kind of games do you normally stream on there, Jake?
I really haven't been doing a whole lot on there.
Then why am I promoting this?
I mean, because I'm trying to get myself out there and do more stuff on it. But you know, time makes fools of us all.
Yeah, there's this thing called life. It sucks.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah, it definitely does. But for the most part, I did a little bit of Resident Evil 4, but mostly I've been kind of doing Ocarina of Time randomizers, which is just so much fun and it's so wacky. I love it.
All right. Well, speaking of Resident Evil 4, this episode we're talking about the year 2004. Hey. So we're going to start off with a bit of a cultural topic. It was a fun one that happened in 2004. 2004 was the launch of Facebook. And at the time, Facebook was just strictly for students of Harvard and other Ivy League schools. It wasn't until 2006 when the website went public, and it wasn't even until a couple years after that where it took the world by storm like it has now. And I mean, I don't think back then, like when we first started getting into social media around this time, I don't think any of us expected it to be what it is now, to where it's like not just a website that you go to, it's a way of life. Like, how many times do we check our Facebook on our phones and our Twitters throughout the day?
Yeah.
I mean, the word Facebook has become like a verb, like I'll Facebook you. Same thing with, stuff like Google and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's also been a lot of criticism and controversy surrounding what Facebook has become in terms of, spread of misinformation and quote unquote fake news, and as well as social media addiction and all kinds of stuff like that. Jake, what do you got to say about that?
Well, it's kind of weird to think back on when Facebook started, because we were all doing MySpace back then.
Which is going to be a fun topic to talk about.
Oh yeah, and slowly MySpace kind of got cluttered, and it felt like there was just so much on it. And then we had Facebook come out, and it was like, oh, it's so sanitized and clean and basic. Like we don't have all this stuff. We don't need to know HTML to make our profiles look good. They all look the same, and we just have different pictures. And then slowly it starts changing over time and becomes this huge, horrifying juggernaut that it is today, where I don't even know what I think of Facebook anymore. I'm like, I have it basically for 4 family members and a good few friends, and that's about it. Everyone else, I'm like, I don't want to see any of this.
Blake, what about you?
I kind of had the opposite reaction that Jake just said. I didn't even get a MySpace until it was February 2008, and it was around then that I didn't even hear the name Facebook,
right?
Because I told my sister, I'm like, oh, I finally made a MySpace, and she was like, we should have made a Facebook.
Same thing happened with me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't, because I remember MySpace first started getting popular when we were middle school, beginning of high school.
Yeah.
I didn't make one until my junior year of high school, which was 2008.
Yeah.
And then I told my friends, yeah, I finally made a MySpace, and one of them was like, yeah, just as everybody's going to Facebook. I'm like, what the fuck is Facebook?
Yeah.
And even then I didn't get a Facebook until 2010.
So, and I got a Facebook soon after that. But anyway, I remember it was Marissa who helped me make my MySpace, and I got it set up. I had a green theme to it or whatever, and then my sister made me a Facebook. And I just love how I didn't ever get to make my own social media, but of course that was on me because I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jake.
Well, I was just going to say, I think with me specifically, since I lived a little further away from you guys in a much smaller town, So once a few people had it, like everybody knew about MySpace.
Yeah.
So then everybody wanted to have a MySpace. Whereas in a larger town, you kind of like you go with the flow of your own stuff instead of having like a bunch of friends, like your few close friends that are the only friends in town, being like, oh, we all have one. And then you're like, oh, okay, I guess I'll have one too.
Yeah. And I mean, MySpace, like that was at my own request, but then my sister was like, no, like, trust me, I promise. But anyway, when I looked at Facebook after I had just been playing on MySpace every day for like a few weeks, I was like, this shit's fucking boring. Like, I just thought it had the most boring look ever. Like, I hated it immediately upon seeing it. Because you couldn't have a profile song and you couldn't like do your own theme and stuff like that. But the upside was it didn't take, fucking 5 minutes to load when you went to each friend's page. So yeah, I mean, it was, I don't know. There's a lot to talk about with Facebook. I mean, like it could almost be its own episode. I mean, I guess you could say that about a lot of stuff, but it's, I don't know. And then, it's just sad what happened to Tom. We all left him, and you know what? Tom wouldn't have done us dirty. I don't think. I don't think he would have done us dirty.
He was a good boy.
That's very true.
He just wanted to sit in that classroom, whatever classroom he was in, with what I don't even know what's written on that whiteboard behind him, but
it's the source code for MySpace.
I hope someday, like a million years from now. Someone starts looking through archives of footage or archives of the internet whenever all of our civilizations are gone, and they think that MySpace Tom was like our deity. That would be perfect. Even better than like Marvel superheroes. So that would be amazing to me.
Yeah. And
I mean, it all worked out in the end though, because Tom like saw what direction MySpace was going in long before anybody else and sold all of his shares in it and went the fuck home.
Yeah. I mean, Timberlake owes it, I think.
Yeah, and Tom, I follow him on Instagram. Actually, he just travels the world and takes pictures of stuff. Like he's just very content. So in that way, I'm kind of happy for him. But it's just funny how the tides turn when, like, flashback to 2015. It's like, what the hell? They got the guy who played Mark Zuckerberg to be the new Lex Luthor? That doesn't make any sense. And then in 2020, it's like, oh, yeah, that made perfect sense.
Now it makes a lot more sense. But on an interesting topic of Facebook, could you imagine if we had profiles with music on Facebook today? It would be so awful. It'd be nothing but meme songs. Like, everyone would have WAP right now, and that would be it. And everyone would hate Facebook even more than they do.
And then, like, in that way, it's almost like irony died, because you would still have those dudes that would be like, oh yeah, I have this one song on my Facebook page out of irony. And it's like, no, dude, you're just being a fucking weirdo.
But on the other hand, how often do you go to somebody else's like profile on Facebook? You're like 99% of your time is spent on your news feed.
Yeah, that's true.
So
no, I creep. Yeah.
I do occasionally here and there, but not a ton.
But also, it's like that's what it's for. Like, enough with the shaming on that, Like that's why it's there. And then as far as like, oh, people get addicted to it and blah blah. It's like, okay, that's bad for them, but that's also not Facebook's problem. Like, it's just kind of like Fortnite. It's like the whole point is for it to be played. Like, if some people don't know how to put it down, that's not Fortnite's problem.
Can't blame like everything for people's problems that they've had for years and just are putting a new face on it.
Yeah.
And then, in an hour from now, I'm going to evolve or devolve this conversation into, we should just give cigarettes to 5-year-olds.
Randall was writing Clerks. We should just hand them out to kids. Lighter and everything.
I mean, hey, what's the problem? I see nothing wrong here.
It puts hair on your chest.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Especially you ladies. You need more of that.
I mean, hey, look, we knew like so many girls in high school that had like a huge smoker's cough. Like, they all turned out okay.
What? You will never stop bringing up that girl on this podcast.
No, I won't, because we all had at least one person like that.
Yeah, everyone, come on. When you said Cookie Monster PJ Pants, everybody clicked on that one.
Exactly.
I think that's an analogy Blake has brought up multiple times, and every time he does, I'm like, oh my god, the Cookie Monster Pants, I forget about them. And
we all remember those pants.
Back in.
Well, here's the thing. here's the differences. When the girl is still wearing Cookie Monster PJ pants, it's like, oh wow, she's kind of like she's probably a dickhead and a chain smoker, and doesn't do a good job with raising her daughter. If the guy's still walking around in PJ pants, it's like, okay, he's probably either a dealer or he's like a predator.
Yeah.
I'm happy I don't go out of the house in my PJ pants. I am sitting here right now with Harley Quinn PJ pants on. But I'm in my own home, so
yeah,
deal with it.
in your own home, late at night, anything's fair game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I
haven't gone out in PJ pants in years.
I'm wearing Coca-Cola sweatpants right now. It's okay.
But hey, since you brought up predators, Blake, let's move on to our next subject: the death of Ronald Reagan.
Jesus God.
I know Blake's gonna have a lot to say about this.
Okay, well, I feel like a lot of the political stuff, I'm not gonna have a ton to say, but we'll get into that. I'll talk more about politics when we get further on. This one, I'm just kind of like, I'll let Blake do his thing here because Blake's the one who should be doing his thing on this topic.
Well, I mainly bring up this topic just because I remember when this happened, it was like on every magazine, it was on every newspaper, it was on every TV show and TV channel. I grew up in a very conservative Republican household that practically worshipped Ronald Reagan. Like, all I heard growing up was how awesome Ronald Reagan was. And when he died, it was basically like some sort of messiah had just left the earth forever. And I just remember all this talk and accolade of, this American icon who has now passed away. And even back then, I was just like, why is this guy so great? And my parents would tell me reasons why they thought he was great. And, of course, as I got older, I found out they were all bullshit. But that's another thing that's worthy of a podcast in and of itself. But I really want to hear what you got to say about this, Blake.
Okay, you know what? First of all, about the topic, the specific topic itself, his passing. I just remember how annoyed my mom was by it all, because it's almost like he had a different funeral every day.
Yeah.
And she's gonna hate that I repeated this, but I just remember finally after all of it, my mom was like, God, they were burying that dude for a month. And like I just remember she would turn on the TV and they were still having another thing, and she's like, oh my God, just get it over with already.
Put the man in the hole, please.
Yeah. So you can tell I very much came from my mom. She and my mom would have been of the perfect age group to really buy into him, and she never bought into that hype of his at all. Like, she did not buy into any of that bullshit. But no, I mean, like, when you think of like, okay, and now I have nothing to say about his passing. I'm sorry. Now when you think about a lot of problems we have today, and different economic issues and stigma, and I guess the unfortunate norm of so many different things, it all stems from him, or a lot of it does. Mm-hmm. And he was one of the first people that, would ask, he got the rich to trick the middle class into hating the poor and blaming them for all their problems. Mm-hmm. And I can go on and on and on, and I don't want to about that. And then also, can we just say it's absolute horseshit that he gets credit for ending the Cold War? Like, what a fucking insult to everyone's intelligence. Like, communism has a lifespan, and for lack of a better way of putting it, the ticker for the Soviet Union, it just ran out. Like, their ticker ran up. And he just happened to be president during, I guess, the right time. And it's like if Barack Obama tried to get credit for Kim Jong-il passing away from whatever he passed away from. Wasn't it heart failure or something? Or
something like that.
Yeah, ultimately, he just died of old age. Like, Kim Jong-il, he was old. And it's kind of like, as soon as he just dropped, Barack Obama was like, you're welcome. Like it's like, no, dude. Like, Christ, he didn't even get to take credit for ordering the Osama bin Laden raid. But yeah, so, yeah, I don't want to... I'm going to calm down now, but yeah. So him getting credit for that is complete horseshit. You go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, it's totally understandable, the kind of like frustration that we have with this, especially now still seeing bits of that around. I mean, the war on drugs is still going on, and most of us are sitting here like, who cares? Like,
right?
Yeah.
Like, we still have like some places we now have are legalizing marijuana and things like that, and it's amazing the type of like profit they're turning for like tax money in that. Like, holy crap! I think the first year it was like a couple of $1 million out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's something that's just like, why are we still like way against things that we shouldn't be at this point? I mean, that's kind of the whole world and all of America at the moment, but you know, it's a cluster, and I guess it kind of started there, maybe a little in between here and there, sprinkled throughout all of history, but he definitely didn't help the facts, and he definitely didn't hurt the fact either, that it's all just kind of been a snowball effect for the most part, it feels like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he really is the father of like the modern face of all of that. And it was so bad because, you know, even when he was alive, he was already getting undue credit and being held on this high pedestal. And when he died, it basically just martyred him forever in American history.
Yeah.
I am glad to see that, you know, martyrdom is slowly, very slowly starting to chip away. And people, you know, I even see people who are more right-leaning being like, yeah, he wasn't that great. It's a slow process, but it's at least a thing.
Well, I don't want to miss the opportunity to bring more awareness to this. Hey, remember how in the last year it was like breaking news? There was like a bombshell that he was on tape talking to Richard Nixon, and he referred to black people as monkeys. Like,
yep.
And guess what? That just shows how much shit has been flying around in the last couple years, because that completely got buried. But yeah, no, that's, yeah. I totally had something else I was gonna like spit out, but then I lost it. I'm sorry.
I just wonder how many Republicans on the day of his death had a movie marathon while standing and saluting their television. I feel like that would be the way to go. That sounds about right.
That was another thing. That was my mom said her piece, and then my pop. I remember my pop was like, "God, none of his shit was even that good."
That's why Doc Brown couldn't believe he would be president.
Yeah, it's not like he made True Grit or something. It's like, God, Bedtime for Bonzo. And
my favorite thing your mom ever said about Ronald Reagan.
Oh God.
Was the one time they had like the Time magazine, I think it was, had like this giant issue about him, and it said Ronald Reagan remembering his legacy, and your mom just goes, because he can't.
Yeah. And he totally had Alzheimer's while he was in office.
Beginning stages of it, yeah, most definitely.
Oh, I wouldn't even say beginning, and that's why it's so hypocritical when like Reaganites try to be like, well, I guess a lot of like Reaganites and moderate Republicans are backing Joe Biden now, but it's so hypocritical when some Republicans are like, do you really feel comfortable having a man become president who may be getting early onset Alzheimer's? I'm like, you all already did it like 30 years ago. Like,
yeah, I mean, hell, Donald Trump now has like displays way more symptoms of it than Ronald Reagan did during his time in office.
Yeah, and a lot of it with Joe Biden is, and I'm sorry to fast forward us to now, but it's like so much of it is just like the stutter that he's battled his whole life. Because when you watch that CNN town hall he did last week, like he's doing fine. Like, it's not. I mean, now whether or not you agree with everything he's saying, that's your thing. But as far as like he's not like on stage like murmuring and blabbling, like whatever. But there you go.
All right.
Sorry.
Well, let's go ahead and move on to our next topic. 2004 was when gay marriage in America really started to get a lot more traction and support. And specifically in 2004, the mayor of San Francisco at the time ordered the city clerks to issue same-sex marriage license, even though, you know, they weren't legal. And by the time like the attorney general and everybody like sued to stop that, 4,000 of them had been issued. And then of course that led to a Supreme Court case that made gay marriage in California illegal. But I mean, at that point, the spark had been lit, and shortly after this, Massachusetts became the first state to make gay marriage legal in the U.S. And I mean, it just snowballed from there. Blake, what do you got to say about this?
I immediately, for some reason, just remember Dave Chappelle's Black Bush being like, all right, guys, some gay people are trying to get married. It's doing the dramatic music. But just imagine that. Two women touch each other's titty balls.
I forgot about the titty balls. That's so good.
But yeah,
stroking each other's nipples and blowing on them.
Oh man! And then it just becomes
makes me sick.
And then it just becomes a Chappelle Show clip reel all over again. But yeah, it's like you said, like the torch had been lit, the spark had been ignited. Yeah, I'm sorry, but I gotta take this moment to really pat myself on the back, because even as like a middle school dude, like middle school white boy, I was never that guy that was like ew or whatever. It's like, all right, yeah, whatever. Like, who cares? Who gives a shit? And I just remember so many other of my classmates were just losing their shit, and just
how does it affect you?
Even at the time, I couldn't help but think, why are you so upset about this? Like, what are you scared of? And it just, and then fast forward to even in the 2010s, I was in a college class, and I think they were talking about repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And one of my classmates, he was like a baseball bro or whatever, and he goes, I don't know, I want to go into the military, and I would hate to be in the same bunk with another guy, and in the middle of the night something comes over him and he won't let me go and get off of me, and I had to interrupt, be like, I'm sorry, are we talking about a gay guy, or are we talking about a werewolf? Like,
honestly, the way that you're putting it sounds like it's his fantasy to me.
Yeah,
just a little bit. Like, I don't know what I'd do if this guy just suddenly decided to come up to my bunk and oh my.
And that's a great Facebook group right now, is quote, conservative men are obsessed with gay sex more than gay men are. And there was well, you go ahead, Jake. I'll let you take the stage.
So yeah, I totally agree. This was a good moment for a step in the right direction to slowly get the whole country going on to this whole fun time. I would say back in this time, this was back when I was 2004. I was 12 at that time, so I wasn't paying a lot of attention to politics and things like that. And it was to me, it was almost like a non-issue. I was like, okay, cool, they can get married now. I mean, kind of surprised that they hadn't been before. Yeah, it's nice that seeing that it's a weird double-edged sword now, knowing and in my mind that's when gay marriage kind of started in this country, because part of me is like, oh wow, that's amazing, it started in 2004, but also part of me is like, 2004, that seems at least like 10 years late from what I would have thought. But then I think of America as a whole, and I'm like, oh yeah, right, we have a very weird obsession with gayness in this country, more than the gays themselves, and it's kind of like it's kind of strange at a lot of times. I think the biggest thing for me that like kept me from turning into a horrible hate monger like most of the people in my hometown where I grew up was there was a kid who was like a year or two above me, and me and all my friends were really into punk rock music, and there's a punk rock group called the Queers. They're a pretty good punk rock group. They're pretty insensitive in some cases with some songs, but it's they're a punk rock group from like the mid 90s, so that's what you're gonna get. He literally had a conversation with me one day where he's like, I can't listen to them. I don't understand why any group would name themselves the Queers. That's just absolutely outrageous. And I was like, they named it that for people like you who will then not listen to their music. So then you don't become a fan, you idiot.
Yeah. There was and I'm gonna try to not, stretch this out as much as possible. There was a gentleman that I came in contact with several times, And I just realized that sentence sounds so wrong considered.
No, I smirked to myself on this end, so continue.
We touched butts.
No, I met this guy. He was the father of a girl that was like the same age as my group of friends. Mm-hmm. And I first met this man in Jerry's Pizza. And I think one of my buddies kind of had a crush on one of her friends. So then we were all just kind of meeting up. And then, this girl's parents were there. And it was this guy and his wife. And one of the first things his wife asked all of us was, "Are any of you gay?" And we're like, and she wasn't even trying to say this like an insult or trying to assume, like she was like straight up like just asking to make sure. And I would go, "Well, no, I'm not, but not that there's anything wrong with that." And she says, "Oh, really? Well, my husband, my brother-in-law, he's gay. My husband's brother is gay." And he goes, "Oh, yeah, effing," and then he says Faggot. Even to quote, I'm not going to say it, but I'm like, "Oh, okay." And he goes, he starts making like a gun, like hand gesture. She goes, "Okay, honey, you don't mean it like that." He goes, I shoot the sin, not him." I'm just like,
what are you, okay. Ghost Rider?
Oh, man. I was going to say, you shoot the sin, not him. What you shooting the sin with there, buddy? Ooh.
Yeah. So then fast forward years after that, I bump into him at the movie theater on, multiple occasions. And he kind of sort of recognized me, and I obviously remembered him. You don't forget that guy. But he's like, and we would make small talk and stuff. And at this point, I'm like, you know what, like, I'm not going to try to challenge you or be like, "Oh, remember that one thing you said 6 years ago?" Well, and it's just like, whatever, I'll be civil. And I'm on my way to my theater anyway. And he'd be like, "What are you seeing this time?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm seeing this. What are you seeing this time?" And he goes, "Well, I'm seeing that." And he would always slip in a complaint about one of the characters in the movies being feminine or something. And, one time it was, the movie was This Is Where I Leave You with Jason Bateman and Tina Fey. And in the story, their mother, Jane Fonda, I believe it was, she, after her husband passes away, she starts a relationship with her friend, a neighborhood woman. And it was after the movie, and I go, "Oh, you saw that too? What did you think of it?" He goes, "Well, it was fine until they had to bring the queers into it." And I'm just like, okay. And then finally, and this is the final act of the story, I promise, but he comes up as a suggested friend on Facebook. And I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't resist. I got to see what this, if he's willing to talk about, like, if he's willing to talk like that out loud, I have to see what he's willing to post in the privacy of his own home." So I'm scrolling through his profile, and it's like, the SCOTUS announcement of gay marriage in 2015, and when the White House, had rainbow lights, and just in all caps, "We are such a joke right now." And I'm like, oh God, And then finally I go down, and it's the most innocent, neutral, moderate post he could have ever had. It was just a picture of his wife as they went out for a picnic. And his wife's just, sitting at the picnic table waiting for him to sit down, but she's smiling at him, and they have their, their spread laid out. And his caption is like, "I don't know how anybody can be gay when beauties like this exist in the world." And finally at that point, it broke me. Finally at that point, I had to think to myself, dude, why do you always have gay guys on your mind? Like, why is this always on your brain?
Yeah, that sounds like he's hiding something there.
It's dominates the front of his brain. Yeah. It's just, but I call it.
If it's any consolation, his business ended up going under. So.
Well, I guess that is a little bit of a bonus there.
You said he owned Jerry's Pizza, right?
No. He just happened to be there.
Oh, okay. Well, Jerry's Pizza went out anyway because their food tasted like ass. But
that's a lot of pizza places around there. Sorry for anyone who likes the pizza up there.
And with that, I digress.
All right. Well, I mean, before we move on, let's just say how much of a fucking boss move it was for the mayor of San Francisco to be like, "Gay marriage is illegal? I think the fuck not." Mm-hmm. And just orders the city clerk, just pass out all the gay marriage licenses you can. Like, just do it now.
Just sitting in his office, just flipping off everybody, just like, ha, look what I've done.
Like, what a boss fucking move.
Yeah. Boss moves in the history of the U.S.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Well, let's jump around a little bit, move on to some fun stuff. We'll move on to movies for now.
Cool.
We'll start off with The Passion of the Christ.
The most fun. Who doesn't want to watch Jesus torture porn written by like
the most racist fucking man in Hollywood?
Yeah, the absolute biggest Jew hater that I think I've ever heard.
Yeah, like, oh my God. I've made the joke before. The Passion of the Christ is literally the greatest snuff film ever made. Like, it is nothing but, you said it is just torture porn. Like, the whole movie is nothing but fucking just blood and violence and I get, like, I guess, you're going for, I guess Mel Gibson's been reading from the Old Testament when he made this movie. I get it. It's biblical. There has to be some, unsettling imagery, but, like, this movie literally existed to make Jews look like animals.
Yeah. And it's insane that, like, I only know a few people, like a handful of people who saw that, and most of them were like, that movie was too much. Like, it was absolutely insane. Right. And now thinking back of it and just remembering, like, church congregations would, like, rent out the movie theater and go in whole droves. Like, the whole church congregation would go to see this with kids and all, and it's like, You're not comfortable with your kids seeing a titty, which they could see at any time, and they have sucked on from a very young age. It's literally the lifeblood of the universe, basically. But you're okay with them seeing Jesus getting tortured to death? Like, are you for fucking real? Like, oh God, that's just that's disturbing. And that's coming from someone who just learned his brother was watching Predator 2 when he was like 7 years old.
I mean, as much as I hate him as a comedian, Carlos Mencia actually had a really good joke about this movie. When exactly that, his church had rented out the movie and, like, made them all watch it during service one day. And there were two old ladies who were, like, getting mad at him because he wasn't crying during, like, the crucifixion scene and all that. And, they were giving him shit saying he wasn't a real Christian. He was just like, hey, you know what? My people were naming their people Jesus long before you fuckers came around. And, like, they were getting mad at him. He's just like, you know what? Keep it up, and I'll spoil the ending for you fuckers.
Yeah.
But, I mean, like, ignoring all of that as a movie, it's like, the most gratuitous movie ever. I mean, I mainly added it on this list just because of, all the hype around it at the time. Because, like you said, Jake, churches everywhere rented this fucking movie out, and just, like, again, like you said, they would go in droves and just watch this movie multiple times. Like, I would see churches rent this movie out, like, weeks in a row. And it's just such a gratuitous movie. It's a very hateful movie, in all honesty. And this was also the beginning of, like, people realizing how shitty of a person Mel Gibson really is.
Yeah.
And it's just, like, my pop, my mother's father, he was a religious man. He was Catholic, went to Mass every Sunday. He would even go twice at Christmas and Easter. So, like, if Christmas if Christmas fell on a Saturday or Monday, he still went on Sunday. And he was offended by it. He like you guys said, like, it was excessive. It was he thought it was disgusting. So it was even, it was even religious it was even, excessive and a turn off from a religious point of view. And he made the point that it's like, I mean, yes, he's God, but he's still God in a man's body. And he goes, and the way Mel Gibson beat him up, like, he wouldn't have even made it halfway through the movie. Like, it was just, nobody has that much blood in them.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, just also, like, when I think of, the different celebrities that are stumbling and tripping nowadays and are like, oh, well, should we cancel them and stuff? I can't help but think, how many fucking chances did we give Mel Gibson? Like,
Mel Gibson had his own roast on Comedy Central way after that.
Yeah, and it's just, even with the Ellen stuff, and I don't know the full story maybe, but basically it just comes down to, oh, she's not as nice as she comes off. And it's like, yeah, I don't think she ever referred to a Jewish acquaintance as an oven dodger, like Mel Gibson has. Like, just we gave him so many chances, but then everybody else, it's like, well, to the guillotine with you.
But he made Braveheart.
Yeah, and I don't mean to sound, discriminatory in any way, but he is a white man.
Yeah.
That's probably why he got so many chances, because he's
Yeah.
just a white dude, and he was in Mad Max.
Yep.
Before those movies were, like, really good.
Yeah. And it's just also, he said some racial stuff, and it's turned out that the most unrealistic role he ever had was in Lethal Weapon, how he could work with a black man and not piss him off that much.
Which,
yeah, like, Riggs wouldn't have had his back at all. Or Murtaugh. Was it Murtaugh? Yeah, it was Murtaugh.
Mel Gibson was Riggs. Gibson was Riggs.
Murtaugh was Danny Glover.
Which, now that we brought up Mel Gibson, I forgot that I wanted to bring this up tonight, specifically for you, Blake. A couple episodes prior, we talked about the movie Signs, and I mentioned how I didn't see it, and you and our guest at the time, Kyle, kept telling me I needed to watch it. I finally sat down and watched it the other day.
I want to know what you think, too.
What's that, Jake?
I want to know what you think, too.
It is meh.
It is meh?
Fuck.
It's okay.
Yeah, come on, man.
It's okay.
on.
I didn't fall in love with it. I'm sorry. I mean, there's just a whole lot of nothing happening. I didn't feel any tension build up. Like I felt like I just got like a few minutes here and there of like, ooh, I saw a leg. Ooh, I saw a hand. Ooh, alien in the alley. Like, here's my thing.
Now that I think of it. Okay, go ahead.
Here's my thing. This movie would have been better if they had just removed all the alien and sci-fi stuff and just made it a drama about a dude losing and then rediscovering his faith in God. Because that shit was way more interesting and more emotional than anything else going on with like the aliens and shit. Because I sat down in this movie expecting a sci-fi thriller, and I feel like I did not get that at all. I feel like I got something that was like basically originally intended as like a family drama, and just for some reason a network executive went, fuck it, add an alien or two in there.
Well, it is.
I mean, it's not what happened at all, but
I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm saying that's what it felt like happened.
Yeah, it's definitely a slow burn suspense film.
No.
Like
it is not a slow burn. A slow burn is basically nothing happens and then stuff slowly happens. This is just a lot of nothing happening, and then all of a sudden one or two things happen and then nothing happens. This is not a slow burn. This is a start-stop rhythm.
Yeah, I guess it is more of a start-stop rhythm. But what I've always liked about it is it's like it's a Bigfoot movie but about aliens. That's really what it is.
That's a really good review.
I'm so bummed out right now. Wow. Don't
worry, we got a bunch of movies on this list that we'll talk about, and everything will turn around.
There's a lot of good stuff in this movie. Like that dinner scene, that was great. Where
he yells at the children.
Yeah, just like I said, that's where I'm getting my point from. Is like scenes like that where it's him and his kids and his family, and just like him talking about like his faith and his family. Like, that stuff was like the best part of the movie. Like the alien stuff, I couldn't give a shit about any of that because like nothing happens, and it just didn't do it for me.
I think it was a great backdrop to the part that you liked, and it was also like, because every time. Well, I guess, the Steven Spielberg, Tom Cruise, War of the Worlds tried to do it too, but it's like, with so many alien invasion dramas, it's always like it follows the heroes who like save the entire world single-handedly and carry it on their shoulders, like Independence Day and stuff. And it's like it does an alien invasion through the point of view of the insignificant family that, is really, it's not in their control at all, and how a normal person would experience it. But I mean, you at least pick up on, it's my favorite ending of any M. Night Shyamalan movie. It's just a world is saved and a man's faith in God is restored.
Which I'm glad you brought up War of the Worlds with Tom Cruise, because like you said, it's from the point of view of like some dude who like saves the whole world. Have you ever read the original novel?
Of War of the Worlds?
Yeah.
No.
The novel is exactly like what you just said you wish it was, where like the novel is literally just like it's from the point of view of like a random bystander who like how they would experience it.
Well, and that's also what the Tom Cruise movie did. It was just, like in Signs as well, it was like the point of view of the bystander, but I would still like to read it eventually, but
it's a decent book.
I guess it was just, once again, like maybe, I talked up a movie to you too late, because the news broadcast of the Mexican boy's birthday party
Yeah, you see, I'm glad you brought that scene up too, because Amber also said that scene scared her, and that scene happened. I just looked at her. I'm like, y'all are a bunch of babies.
Yeah, that was the great Bigfoot scene where he turns around, looks at the camera, and then keeps going.
What's that, Amber?
When it first came out, not when we were 20 fucking 9.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're. Yes, thank you, Amber. But I mean, it's just and honestly, like the scene when but a great scene is just when his son, he saves his son, and his son's like, "Did somebody save us?" And Mel Gibson just starts crying. It's such a great acting moment, and it's so sad because he really, I mean, you got to give the devil his due. Like, he is a good actor.
He's just an awful person.
He's just an awful human being.
Yeah.
But in the movie world, he is such a wonderful man.
Right.
Was it on one of your podcasts, or did I hear this somewhere else, where someone said you'd think that people who are good actors would be good at acting nice in real life? I might have heard that somewhere else.
I don't
know.
know.
I heard that somewhere else, but
yeah, you would think that people who are good actors would be good at acting like they're nice people in real life, even if they aren't, like out in public and like doing stuff like that. But I guess that's what happens when you drink and.
Yeah, there you go. But well, that's a shame. I'm sorry that it's a shame that you didn't love it as much as some of us did. So sorry about that.
Well, on that note, y'all are a bunch of babies. Moving on.
Uh-huh.
The Dawn of the Dead.
20 fucking 9. Like Amber said it best.
It's not my fault. Anyway, next movie, Dawn of the Dead remake by Zack Snyder, came out this year. I haven't seen the remake. I don't think. I may have seen bits and pieces of it. But I think you put it best, Blake, from what I've heard about it. It sounds like it was very much a movie that like Zack Snyder made while he was trying to figure out who Zack Snyder was.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it. I've only seen it once, and I remember it being... This was when I liked zombie movies and zombie-related things before The Walking Dead made it terrible, and it got oversaturated after that. But yeah, I remember liking it a good bit, but at the same time being like, a lot of this is out of control. It did help me discover the original Dawn of the Dead, which I loved, and is just a stupidly amazing movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's so simple, and the end just goes so out of control off the hook that you're just like, I guess anything can happen in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's I think it is pretty good for what it is. I mean, a lot of people love it. They say it is one of the few good horror remakes. There are people out there who claim that it did surpass the original, but it at least lives up to it. But yeah, I mean, I'm just not a zombie person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be honest with you. I only ever watched this movie retroactively because I grew to love Zack Snyder so much, and I'm like, well, I guess I have to see his entire filmography. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't, I mean, there are a few slow motion moments, I guess, but ultimately it doesn't look anything like his other movies. And it's just like, he was just, I guess this was just like his demo movie, I guess. I don't know. And that may be backhanded. I don't know if I want to go with that, but yeah, it's just, and it introduced, you got to give it credit though, it introduced fast zombies. So that wasn't really as much a thing yet.
Was it this one or 28 weeks later, or 28 days later? Which one came first?
I believe this one.
Okay. I honestly don't remember.
I mean, even though I haven't seen this movie, I will say I feel pretty confident in saying this is the thing that like triggered the modern like love of zombies that got beaten to death over the past like 10 years.
Definitely.
Because I remember after this movie, like every other thing, whether it be movies, TV, video games, books, it was zombies.
Right.
And like this is why I haven't watched a single episode of The Walking Dead, because by the time The Walking Dead came out, zombies were so beaten to death for me, like pun intended.
Well, then also don't forget,
Walking Dead.
It was like the go-to of the amateur filmmaker as well. Like every time some buddies got together and they wanted to try to make like a fan-made camcorder short film, they're like, oh, well, we could do a zombie movie and we'll do the makeup and everything. Like that was the go-to. Like somebody wanted, so many people wanted to make a zombie movie just for fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like back in the '80s when they were doing all that with a lot of horror movies. Would be those type of movies where it was two dudes who were like, let's make a movie. We'll make a horror movie. That's easy. You just need fake blood.
Right.
Yeah.
And then as it went on, it just became to like zombies are really easy.
Yeah.
Like, you just need makeup and fake blood. You don't need incredible makeup. You just
Right.
need simple makeup.
You can just look a little dirty and beat up, and I mean, basically,
Yeah,
you could just cast a homeless person at that point.
Yikes.
Yeah. I mean, he's not wrong, and that'd be good. You'd have jobs for the homeless then.
Yeah.
That's what we need to do. Hollywood, get on it. Start making a new zombie movie with homeless people as all the zombies.
There's a Habitat for Humanity for you, President Carter.
Damn.
Let's move on.
I'm honestly going to be pissed off about signs the rest of this episode.
Well, can we jump around a little and talk about a really good zombie movie?
That's what I was about to do. I was about to go on.
Yes.
Another zombie movie, fun movie. Shaun of the Dead came out this year.
My favorite zombie movie of all time.
Now, this movie's just fun. It's a fun, funny movie. It's not my favorite movie of that trilogy with Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and The World's End.
Are you a Hot Fuzz guy?
Hot Fuzz is definitely my favorite.
Yes. Totally.
Man, Hot Fuzz fucking makes me laugh from beginning to end. But Shaun of the Dead's pretty good too.
Yes.
Blake, what do you got to say about Shaun of the Dead?
Yeah, I mean it's a good time. And then also like what satire and imitation is one of the greatest forms of flattery, and you know, it helped cement what we just said about the zombie genre. Because I mean, this came out the same year as Dawn of the Dead, and you know, it's how they say, you know, when something starts to be parodied, that is an achievement in and of itself. Because like, well, at least we're becoming so big and so great that people are starting to make fun of us now. At least we've made it this far. But yeah, it's not my personal favorite of the trilogy. I'm actually, and I'm probably one of like 12 people in the world that would say this, I'm actually a World's End person. I don't know. It's just with Shaun of the Dead, it's like, that's everybody's favorite. But then in Hot Fuzz, like, Hot Fuzz is pretty goddamn great, though.
Yeah.
I remember, this is a story that's not about me, but my ex had always said that she went to see Hot Fuzz on its release weekend at the theater in Cumberland.
Yeah.
And she said she was the only one laughing through the whole movie.
Oh man.
Which I'm like, that makes perfect sense, because that movie is so dry. Like, compared to Shaun of the Dead, it's dry British humor at its best.
I mean, the scene when, and I'm sorry, I know we're supposed to be talking about one movie, but it's like the scene when he gets every kid kicked out of the pub, like, that's just great.
Yeah.
It's like, when were you born? 19, and he's, you know, you're 35. Oh!
And it's just him there reading his paper.
Yeah.
Another cranberry juice for you.
I think I'm all right.
Yeah, that's great. But yeah, Shaun of the Dead. Yeah, it's definitely, it's probably one of the great parodies of the 21st century.
Oh yeah, and it's nice because it's not a parody. It's a parody, but it's not a spoof.
Yeah.
Like a lot of those movies.
It's not like Scary Movie or
it's not like
that.
Scary Movie, or it's not even like Airplane or something like that,
Right.
which is even completely different from both of those movies.
Yeah.
Well, it truly is its own story, though, too.
Yeah.
You know, like
and
his.
It actually takes itself seriously too, which is what I really like about it. That's a big problem with like comedy parody movies a lot of time, is they're meant to be stupid.
Yeah.
Whereas Shaun of the Dead is actually kind of smart in a way. It's not the smartest movie, but it's a wonderfully brilliant movie because it's realistic.
It was Zombieland before Zombieland.
Yes, it very much was, and better than Zombieland, I would argue.
Well, at least Shaun of the Dead didn't have a random sequel 10 years too late.
Yeah.
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 But it didn't have Bill Murray, so I don't know if that's points on or off. Depends on who you ask, I guess, at this point.
Yeah.
I can take it or leave it. It's Edgar Wright. That makes it better.
Yeah. Let's move on to the next movie, Hellboy. I saw this movie for the first time a couple years ago.
Same.
The movie as a whole is okay, but Hellboy, the character in this movie, is pretty great. I mean, Ron Perlman, they couldn't have gotten someone better for Hellboy.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the reboot with, what's his name from Stranger Things?
Dave Harbour.
Yeah, I haven't seen that. I've heard very mixed reviews about it. But I mean, this one with Ron Perlman, it was all right. It's a cool popcorn flick, but I mean, Ron Perlman as Hellboy is like that's classic.
Yeah.
What do you got to say, Jake?
I'm very comfortable with saying that I like this movie and the new one about evenly.
Yeah.
It's a very strange kind of thing. Like, I was never really into, I don't know why, like as a teenager, I wasn't really into like Hellboy and things like that, but I was really into the Doom video game.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm an adult and I'm getting more into these things that have to do with demons and stuff like that. And I'm like, why didn't I get to this sooner? This is like tailor made for me. So I watched this Hellboy movie, the Ron Perlman one, and was like, that was great. Like, I'm amazed that it's, it holds up very well for a movie that was made in 2004. The effects look pretty good. There's a few dodgy bits here and there, but it's expected from 2004. The makeup's pretty good. There are a few times where the horns get a little wiggly, but the new movie did that too. There was one scene specifically where I was like, "Ooh, oh wow, that's really bad." But it does good at telling the origin story of Hellboy and the first volume of the comics. After this movie and before the new one, I actually bought all 4 volumes and read through them, and they are some of my favorite comics.
Nice.
And I could see where the newer movie was trying to go. The problem is all the story from the newer movie is from like volume 3 of the comics. So it kind of feels like it's a rushed story that didn't get enough time to develop. That's also like the biggest one in the series. And my big thing with Hellboy movies is they focus too much on the word boy for them, where Hellboy's always seems to have daddy issues in these movies. Like, good bit in the first one, a fair bit in the second one, which felt even weirder because it was an R-rated movie to boot. I can understand from like a PG-13 movie that's kind of more a little more family oriented. Like, it wasn't incredibly gory, it wasn't incredibly scary, it was spooky and fun. And it's weird to have it like in the comics, his dad dying is one of the first things that happens. And then he just kind of like continues on, and at that point it's like, since he came around during World War II era, he's like pushing like 70 years old at this point. He's getting up there in age. I'm probably way off on, or I guess he would be like 90 at this year. Back then it would have been 70. And it just seems odd for like technically a 70-year-old man to be obsessed with cats and Baby Ruth candy bars. It's just a little odd for me, but that's probably the road that I'm headed down in a way, to be obsessed with cats and comic books and Baby Ruth candy bars. But it'll be like I don't remember what they're called. Damn, Butterfingers. It'll be Butterfingers, and I won't be able to keep my false teeth in.
You got to get on that Charleston Chew train, man.
Charleston Chew. How old are you, Donnie?
Old enough to know that Charleston Chews are pretty fucking fantastic.
I'm old enough to know that most candy could kick Charleston Chew's ass. All
right, you know what? Eat my butt. There's a candy bar for you.
Hey, those chocolate-covered anuses that they make for Valentine's Day are delicious, sir.
Chocolate starfish. Blake, what do you got to say about Hellboy?
It's pretty great.
All right, next topic.
All right, that's it. Good night.
Go ahead.
But it's one of those movies where like it's really good. I think it's really good, but I don't have that much to say about it. And
I remember watching it. I remember liking it, and then that's pretty much the peak of what I remember about it.
It speaks for itself. It's a very good movie that speaks for itself, and you need to see.
Yeah. It is a very enjoyable movie. It's fun. It's absolutely not boring. There's not a boring segment in it.
Not at all.
You will be very entertained all the way through. It is totally outdone by its sequel. I think personally, like Hellboy 2: The Golden Army in 2008 was just it's. that movie is almost a tragedy because it was just such a superior sequel, and its biggest misstep was that it came out literally 7 days before The Dark Knight, and it's
Rip.
like it just got absolutely it basically committed suicide.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just
And
box office suicide.
Another good thing with the sequel is it's not based, as far as I know, it's not based on any existing Hellboy story. But I haven't read the short stories, so
it's an original thing, and then
I thought so.
and that was a good proof. It's like it's okay to make up stuff as long as it's good, as long as it's cool. Like
Also,
it does.
Guillermo del Toro was like the perfect choice for a Hellboy movie.
Oh yeah.
Like that's where you go. I think from here, if anyone were to make a Hellboy something, they need to do like an HBO or an FX show
Yeah.
Yeah.
and really flesh it out.
But yeah, and then it's with the reboot. I'll always be resentful how for years it's like, oh, we don't have the money, we don't have the budget, we don't have the funding, the producing for a third film. We can't complete the trilogy, and then they make a reboot, and it's like, well, then who paid for the reboot? Like, you didn't have any of this? You didn't have any money to spend on a third movie, but now all of a sudden you found all this money for a reboot. Like, what the fuck? But yeah, so no, Hellboy 1, it's a fun time.
Oh yeah.
All right, well, then let's move on to our next movie, The Girl Next Door. I remember when I was growing up, and I actually had cable at the time, this movie was on all the fucking time on Comedy Central. This was one of the, like, 3 movies that Comedy Central would constantly rotate, along with Employee of the Month and Let's Go to Prison.
I think out of those 3, Employee of the Month was the one I watched the most.
Oh, my God.
I haven't even seen The Girl Next Door.
The Girl Next Door is a very heartwarming movie despite the subject matter. It's about a dude who meets a girl who used to do porn. And so, of course, he has like a million like preconceived judgments of her that are like completely wrong. And it's just a very good, very nuanced, very heartwarming movie. And it's also just a fun movie to watch. It's got like a pretty low key, like dry sense of humor in it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like it would be like it would be a movie for me, but I'm not sure how current day me would react to it, because I'm the type of person where like I've like met I think like 1 or 2 girls who turned out to be cam girls, and that was kind of an interesting type of thing. But if I met a girl who was a porn star, I'd be like, I need to sit down with you and talk for like 5 hours just about your life and what you've done, because I just want to hear about your experience with all this. Like I'm not sitting it to here to be like a creepy old man, be like, tell me about your titties. No, I'm sitting here to be like, I want to know what this is like. Like,
Yeah, like
I ain't ever gonna be in porn. Look at me. I could have at one point, but that time has passed me. I was also like 16 then, so you know. I know that came off a little creepier than I meant. I meant at the time my 16-year-old body was far better suited for porn than my 28-year-old body is now. Ooh. I think Catface is getting canceled tonight, boys.
Well, see you again in another 8 years.
Yeah, exactly. At least I'm talking about my own penis.
Jesus Christ. Blake, what do you got to say about this movie?
Okay, I second what you say, Donnie. Right on the dot. Hit the nail on the head. I remember, one of my coworkers at my first job. She came from a very Christian family, and she was like, she was a very religious girl and stuff. But this was one of her favorite movies, and like everyone had the same initial reaction to her. And she goes, honestly, I don't know how else to say that, but if you take out all the sex and porn topics and issues, it's actually a very heartwarming movie.
It's not even a raunchy movie in that regard.
No, I mean it has its moments, because like it has its moments for the sake of being like, okay, this does take place in the real world,
right?
Like, the sex exists in the real world,
but it's nothing gratuitous. No,
I guess not. But no, like it's well, yeah, I feel bad. I feel bad for all the horny dudes who like rented this movie from Blockbuster. We're like, oh yeah, he's gonna be boning her in every scene.
Yeah,
like, they have to watch this thing. It's like, wait, he's like discovering his emotions and becoming a man.
Gay.
And, Yeah, it is. It's a very underrated movie too. I think in a way, like it kind of it came out between American Pie and Superbad, and that's kind of a shame because it kind of got buried between the two. Because had the movie before it or the movie after it had not existed, and it had come out a little sooner or a little later, it could have been like the great high school, college, rite of passage, coming of age comedy for its time. Like it's just like. My mom was, kind of like a point my mom makes about the movie Peggy Sue Got Married. If Back to the Future didn't exist, it would have been a bigger hit than it was. So yeah, no, it's kind of unfortunate, but
All right, let's move on to our next movie. Guilty pleasure of mine, Mean Girls. I mean, this is just a movie that is such a cult classic at this point. I mean, so many quotable moments from it. So fetch. On Wednesdays we wear pink. Too gay to function. Like, this is a movie that is loved by people that you would not expect to love it.
Oh yeah.
Jake, what do you got to say about Mean Girls?
Well, unfortunately, this is another one I haven't seen.
What is the matter with you?
There's a lot that's wrong with me. I think my big thing with this is since I grew up in such a small town, it was one of those movies that I feel like everybody loved. So therefore, I was like, I don't want to see this. Because I don't trust these people's opinions that it's going to be a good movie. I mean, I've proved myself wrong in a good few occasions with this. It's something that I would like to sit down and watch, but it's something that I would like to sit down and watch with like you guys. Because I feel like you would have the right mindset for it and would elevate it.
It is definitely a great movie to watch during like a get-together, like a buddy night.
Oh, yeah. Is it my turn, or am I just...
Yeah, go for it. Okay. Yeah. Yes.
I was just like, could I talk now? But anyway, that persona, that alter ego is going to keep coming back for this episode, I just decided. But anyway, and yeah, I guess, like I was just saying, I guess Mean Girls would have also been at indirect fault for burying The Girl Next Door. I mean, I guess since like Mean Girls was, PG-13 and more people were able to see it. My point is, The Girl Next Door should have been a bigger hit than it was. But anyway, on to Mean Girls. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where every nice thing there is to say about it has already been said. It did go through that period where it was really overrated and people were quoting it a little too much. But then I feel like we kind of got past that, and now it's just okay to, unconditionally like it again. It's so quotable. I mean, you could almost fill an episode with like half the script.
Yeah. I mean, the best thing that come from that movie is making people realize how fucking funny Tina Fey is.
Oh yeah. And it's just like all the little jokes too, not even the obvious ones that like would go on a t-shirt, like Gretchen Wieners, my father is the inventor of toaster strudels. Like, I don't know why that just tickles the shit out of me. And
her hair is big because it's full of secrets.
Yeah. No, it's, and then of course, like, you still have the people who are like, oh, how come they never made a sequel? And it's like, because the ending, like, what more was there to say? So, yeah. Right. I've run out of things to say now.
Okay, Marlon Brando. Let's move on to Super Size Me. This movie, my biology teacher in 10th grade actually made us watch this movie.
Yep, same.
Yeah. And, I mean, it is a very, like, it's definitely a movie I recommend, like, really anybody watching because it's just a good movie in and of itself. But I remember this movie being, like, not necessarily the peak, but, like, it was a very high point in that whole, like, crusade against, like, McDonald's and fast food in general.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's like, on the one hand, I remember even back then when this was going down, on the one hand, I was kind of like, it is good that we are becoming more aware of, like, what we eat and put into our bodies and, trying to, like, improve on that stuff. But on the other hand, I'm like, it's fucking McDonald's. At what point did McDonald's pretend to be like a farmer's market? Like, it's burger and fries. At what point were you like, I can eat like this every day and live to be 100? Like, there came a point where it's like you got to take some personal responsibility. But I will say it was pretty fun watching Morgan Spurlock slowly develop diabetes and erectile dysfunction in this movie.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah. Blake, what do you got to say about this?
I mean, yeah, it kind of did start the trend of, like, the shaming other people for liking fast food. Like, Did you not see that movie? And it's like, man, like, I don't have fucking time to cook a steak or salmon right now, and I have to go to work. Like, what do you want from me?
Look, man, Wendy's has breakfast now, and that shit is dope. I'm going to eat what I want.
Okay,
I'm on my 30-minute lunch break, and I was out of bread at home today, guys. Like, come on, just let me have McDonald's.
Okay, straight up sidebar. Wendy's breakfast fries are better than their regular fries. Like,
Abso-fucking-lutely.
Yeah, they need to sell that shit all day long.
Yeah.
But anyway, with Super Size Me, it's just amazing that it took this to make people be like, oh, maybe McDonald's isn't good for you. And for me, like, I was like, yo, like, maybe it was the fact that McDonald's food actually just doesn't taste that good.
Yeah. Or maybe it's the fact that it makes me feel like shit afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, yo, do you know that if you eat those fries, they don't digest in your stomach properly? It's like, yeah, I could have told you that last night at 2 a.m. when I was on the fucking toilet for 5 hours. I didn't need fucking New Yorker Michael Moore to tell me that.
Have you seen the sequel?
I didn't actually. Have you?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Who does he roast in that one? Who does he drag in that one?
Basically the FDA and current food trends in general.
Okay, yeah. What, like how like Four Loko straight up killed people?
Yeah, more like he basically, like, you know how when you see like chicken in the store, you'll see like organic and free range. He basically proves how like that shit means absolutely nothing.
Well, it's also like, it's one of those things where they would have been better off if they just didn't say that to begin with, because I remember when pizza came out with the natural pizza, and they were like, or I don't know if it was pizza, it might have been Domino's, but they're like, made with completely natural ingredients, real ingredients, and I'm like,
what were you using before?
Yeah, what
For real.
I was like choking on my stuffed crust, being like, well, what's this? And I remember Super Size Me actually pissed off a lot of dudes. It's like, yo, it's not a mandate. Like, he's not being elected to the Supreme Court. You're still allowed to go out and eat whatever you want. It's just, you're not going to be able to shit right when you're older.
Yeah.
But I just remember one of my classmates was like, this dude doesn't know anything. He doesn't know his own ass from a hill of beans.
Okay, Gone with the Wind. Fucking, were you in school with Clark Gable? What the hell?
Yeah. And he's just like, this guy doesn't know shit. I don't trust him. He doesn't know it. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, he's not even, at this point in the movie, he's not even expressing an opinion. He's just recording what's happening to him. Like, what do you... You're seeing the evidence unfold for you. Like, you can't get it up anymore, which I do. Okay, this movie at least brought more awareness to that, because I didn't even know that would have been a thing. But it makes perfect sense, like how it could kill your sex drive. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just. Oh, I still think about the one character, whatever, the one person he meets in the movie who lived in Texas, and they were like the king customer of the Houston McDonald's, mm-hmm. and they were just so big, and they had to have like their stomach stapled when later on or something like that. But yeah, I mean, it's a necessary movie, but I don't know. It's just it shouldn't have been that mind blowing to some people. That's all I got to say.
See, this is where my thoughts on this movie come in, which are the same but opposite in a weird way. I find it odd that it did take this movie for people to get to that point, but at the same time, I didn't like this movie at all, because I'm sitting there going, well, why is anyone surprised? Why is anyone surprised that Morgan Spurlock is basically killing himself here when all he's fucking eating is McDonald's? Like, of course this shit's going to happen when he eats McDonald's. There's no fucking point of this movie. Like, we all know that this food is bad. Unfortunately, that attitude has caused me to not change my opinion at all, and I'm probably going to die young. So, Clogged arteries will be the death of me. Fast food will be a big part of that because I am a terrible, terrible child at heart. For everyone listening out there, if we have teenage kids who are listening for some reason, if you're the kid in school who eats nothing but chicken tenders and pizza and will not go out of your comfort zone, you are going to develop a disorder because you're going to be too nervous to eat anything and you're going to be terrified of food for the rest of your life. Take it from me, that kid.
Yeah.
It's going to be awful.
No,
Don't do it. Eat more food. Try more food. And not just meat.
I gotta eat chicken nuggets like Baby Yoda. It's like, what?
Yeah. But no, that's me. But I'm more like, oh, I gotta eat chicken nuggets like Baby Yoda. Oh no!
At that point, more
where
like
are
Jabba
my
the Hutt.
feet going?
Oh no!
But yeah, no, that's actually a really good point, Jake. It's like, this is what will happen to you if you eat it 3 times a day for 30 days straight. It's like,
and if they ask if you want it the biggest size, and you have to say yes. That was the real thing that got me. It's like,
yeah,
well, fucking, of course you're gonna eat like 8 pounds of. You're gonna eat a bag of potatoes a day, like a sack of potatoes.
yeah, it's
And
like,
not
what
even
do you?
real potato, probably.
What did you join a cult? Like, what? But,
and then also on that, it's like you add the soda on top of that, and it's like, dude, come on. We all know. We have been told this for so long that soda is just sugar, and it's not good for you.
Poison in a can.
I'm luckily down to like a lower amount of soda than I was as a teenager. Not
Same.
incredibly low, but I pretty much, the only 3 things I really drink are like soda, a decent amount of water, and a shit ton of milk.
Yeah.
Get some tang in your life, my boy.
Get some what? Some Tang?
Tang. It's what the
Tang,
astronauts drink.
It has been a while since I've had some Tang. I prefer like Crystal Light for things like that because I'm a weirdo.
I do got to say, though, a McDonald's Coke just hits differently if you have it every once in a while. Like, it really is different. But, yeah.
All right, well, let's move on to our next movie. Shrek 2. Not your grandfather's ogre.
Don't
Now, I brought this movie up because I remember when we talked about the first Shrek movie, we talked about how big of a deal it was for DreamWorks Studios for that movie to come out because they ended up beating Monsters, Inc., a Disney movie, for Best Animated Feature that year, which, that's a big fucking deal.
Oh, yeah.
And I just remember Shrek being kind of like an instant classic, like, and then I remember Shrek 2 coming out, and it wasn't. Like it,
which is so weird because like the internet is a weird time machine where in retrospect everyone likes Shrek 2 suddenly, and I'm like, I remember Shrek 2 being all right at best.
Yeah. Like,
wait a second. Whoa! What conversation am I in right now?
Oh! This is going to be the rest of these movies are going to be really fun to talk about based on this info.
Yeah.
Okay, Blake, tell us the good things about Shrek 2 and why it's amazing.
I thought it was the universal opinion that Shrek 2 was the sequel that surpassed the original.
I was not aware of that, and it's definitely not an opinion I share.
I was totally under the impression that like a lot of people, if not many, if not most people, prefer Shrek 2.
I mean, that may be the case. I'm just not aware of it.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of it until recently when I think it was like Screen Junkies did Shrek 2. Because that's all they do anymore.
Yeah.
And when they did that, it was like, wow, a lot of people really like Shrek 2? Okay, yeah. I guess so. I mean, Accidentally in Love is better than All Star. I can't argue that.
when I first saw it, I mean, I was just at the age where it's like, oh, that was great. Oh, that was great too. Oh, that was better. That was better. But I'm like, in hindsight, I'm like, I don't really know if I have a favorite between the 2 Shreks. A Tale of 2 Shreks.
It's not the third.
Yeah, I just remember watching the first Shrek and thinking like, oh my god, this is fucking funny. And then like even now thinking like, well, that was a pretty funny movie back then. And I remember watching Shrek 2, and that was like my first experience of like the sequel falling far short of the original. Like so much so that I have never seen like 3 or 4.
I've never seen 3 or 4.
I think I've seen 3, but I wouldn't say that it falls like incredibly short of the first one. It just doesn't, to me, it just doesn't live up to the first one. And it's kind of got a strange story, like in hindsight. Like now, it's a very like interesting story where it's literally like Shrek's wife's parents are racist against him. So he goes and gets a race change. He changes into a human and becomes a sexy, thick human Shrek, which was just weird. And then Donkey becomes a white stallion. Like, it was such a strange, like, what is going on with this movie? And then it ends with a giant gingerbread man crashing the castle.
I mean, I gotta give it. It introduced my favorite character in the series, which was Puss in Boots. I love Puss in Boots.
That means something very different to me now at this age.
Oh yeah. But yeah, it's just, and also like that cover of "I Need a Hero." Like they didn't have to go that hard.
That's true.
but well, I think it was Shrek 2 that has like the one joke I bring up where it's like jokes you can't do today, where it's like he finds the big bad wolf and he does this thing where it's like, what? And Prince Charming's like, I find a gender confused wolf, and it's like, oh wow.
Yeah, that's all. But at the same time, I can argue that he's the villain, so you're not supposed to like him anyway.
Yeah.
So works for me. Also, is it just me or does he look almost exactly like Gilderoy Lockhart?
A little bit.
Okay. I was thinking that when you guys were talking about Shrek 1.
I still want to see, I think it's the third one, or maybe I still want to see the one with that one fat kid who's like, do the roar.
I love you, Daddy.
I love you, Daddy. But
let's move on. I mean, let's move on to our next movie. I'm done with the ogre.
You're ogre now?
Like that.
Yeah, it's all ogre now.
Yeah.
It ain't ogre until the fat lady sings. I don't know which one of us that is, but we'll figure it out later.
Let's move on to our next movie, The Day After Tomorrow. This is another movie my biology teacher made us watch.
That's weird.
I think it might have been a substitute teacher. I can't remember too well.
She thought she was summoned the wrong class.
Fun fact, this is totally off topic, but I remember one of the movies that my history teacher brought in for us to watch was Blazing Saddles. Continue.
Wow.
That's all you need to know. Continue.
All right. Day After Tomorrow, I bring this movie up mainly because this was like the beginning of like when people really started talking about climate change, or as it was called back then, global warming. I mean, this is what's that?
Sorry, that was a Futurama reference.
Oh.
Global warmer.
Yeah, this is when people really first started like kind of becoming aware and talking about it and like, what could happen if we don't do something about this? And then, I mean, that just skyrocketed a couple years later when Al Gore came out with An Inconvenient Truth.
Yeah.
But beyond that, this movie is kind of meh. It's an all right movie.
Yeah.
It literally just exists to play off of the hype of a hot topic at the time.
Yeah.
What do you guys got to say?
I mean, that pretty much sums up for me. I think I've watched this movie once or twice and just remember it being like just weird and like it didn't keep my attention very well. And like wolves were chasing them in downtown Manhattan in a building. And I'm like, how did the wolves get there? I'm very confused by this. The wolves got there awful fast for it just being the day after tomorrow.
Yeah.
They must have been booking it down from like the north for days to make it there on time.
Yeah. It's, and I know it had good intentions, well, other than just cashing in on a hot topic at the time, but I'm sure at the time people thought it had good intentions, but in hindsight, it's just such a dumb movie now because it's like, okay, I believe in that stuff, but I don't believe that stuff would happen over the course of 12 hours.
Yeah.
Like, all that shit that happens within a half hour, I'm like, okay, you were making this entire issue, this entire cause look stupid. And it's just like the characters are just so two-dimensional.
Yeah.
I think I just thought of a pretty good analogy for this. It's like the on Xanax version of 2012, where it's a little more relaxed. It's not just crazy bullshit throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's a little more relaxed, but it's just bullshit.
Yeah.
And then when it announced that, because it's the same director, Roland Emmerich, he did.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, he did Independence Day. He did The Day After Tomorrow, and then he did 2012. Well, that's what he became known for. He became known for as being like the disaster movie guy. He had to do every national disaster. But
I think the UN needs to start looking into him then, because he seems to have a very unhealthy obsession.
Well, then also it just reminds me of how like and I'm sorry, I'm once again just talking about another movie, but it's like the 2012 movie we got was so lesser than the 2012 movie we were supposed to get, because they were working on a 2012 movie, and they just canceled it because the Roland Emmerich one came out before they could get it into production. They were going to have a apocalypse movie where a dude has to time travel and recruit different versions of himself so they can track down the physical embodiment of the apocalypse and beat the shit out of him.
That sounds awesome.
I'm like, that sounds like the best movie ever. And Michael Bay was supposed to direct it.
Oh my God, that would have been insane. Why did they cancel that? Just change the name and make it not about 2020. Just make it about the apocalypse.
But that would have been that just would have been so fun and epic if it was just a 2012 movie. But yeah, just like he recruits, like from different time periods or like different dimensions or like parallel versions of himself. And it's just like the apocalypse is embodied in a person. Like he is the entity. I guess they just gotta fucking jump him and make him bite the curb.
That's how the movie ends. They find him, and it's just them like all like surrounding him and kicking him in the fetal position as the credits roll up over the scene.
Hitler's mama got one big titty and one little titty.
They call that bitch Biggest Smalls.
It turns out the apocalypse was really the friends we made along the way.
All right, fuck you.
Well, it's really a masturbatory story because he's just playing with himself at that point.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
If he's the only friend he has, what other option is there?
A rogue candy.
Oh, God.
Well, let's move on to our next movie, Prisoner of Azkaban. This movie is like a lot of people's favorites. Prisoner of Azkaban, the book, is a lot of people's favorite book. It's not my favorite. I don't even think it's in top tier for me. I like it. I love the character of Sirius Black. But I will say this movie is like one of the last like really, really faithful to the source material movies. Because, Goblet of Fire is like all over the fucking place, especially with pacing. And then from Order of the Phoenix on, it really just got lazy in terms of them just really catering to people who already read the books. But yeah, Prisoner of Azkaban. One thing I did not like about the Prisoner of Azkaban movie, this was the movie when they started having like Harry, Ron, and Hermione, and like a lot of the other characters wearing like normal everyday people clothes whenever they were at Hogwarts. Instead of like their robes and stuff, and I hated that because for me it felt like it killed a lot of the illusion. Yeah, that's just a minor nitpick point for me. But other than that, it's a good movie. It's a solid movie. Blake, I know you love Prisoner of Azkaban. What do you guys say?
It's my personal favorite Harry Potter movie. I don't know if this is going to be another Shrek 2 moment, but I feel like it is the personal favorite of a lot of other people. But yeah, I just love the moment at the end when they bust Sirius Black out of the tower, and they save him. Like, it's just playing that like happy music, and like, it does that weird like fast zoom in of him turning his head. I can't explain it, but like, it's just they're like, oh, we have enough time, and they're like, just doing that zoom in of Gary Oldman. He just turns his head real quick, and then they're like on Buckbeak, and they're like all happy and stuff. It's like, that's probably my favorite moment in the saga. And yeah, I think that is an interesting critique you bring up, Donnie, is like, yeah, they just started wearing normal clothes randomly, and it's like, I feel like, I don't know, it's just, why?
Yeah, like watching Hermione fight the Whomping Willow while wearing a hoodie and jeans, it's just weird.
Yeah, it's just they got their weekend casuals of American Eagle and Hollister.
Like, honestly, in that scene, I'm kind of fine with it because it's like they're not going to class or anything, so they should be fine to wear normal clothes. But it's like throughout the whole movie, they're like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just love how like this Harry Potter movie, more so than the other ones, it has a very Halloween-y vibe to it. And but yeah, I adore it. It's yeah, and I guess fast forward, the Goblet of Fire always felt like a filler episode until the very end. I don't know. I don't know. But yeah,
The book is way better in that one.
Yeah.
For sure.
I
'Cause
believe
it
that.
builds up the mystery of a lot of things are happening and you don't know who the bad guy is, and it throws in a lot of red herrings and stuff in there that kind of make the whole book happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then it has the one Doctor Who guy in it as
I
David
love
David
that.
Tennant
That
or
was the
whatever.
first time I saw David Tennant, and I fell in love with him immediately.
Oh, really?
Oh,
Because
yes, I
oh,
love David Tennant.
well, no, it's just I see him in that movie, and I'm like, oh god, he's really fucking overselling it. Like,
Oh no, I'm totally for that. When it comes to like Harry Potter, like a lot of the villains I would prefer to be like over the top and like kind of dramatic,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
especially him because he was just like a psychopath.
Yeah.
yeah, that's true.
So, are you finished, Blake? I don't want to like interrupt you if you're not done.
No, I am, but thank you for
Okay.
asking.
Yeah, of course. Because I'm about to go on a rant about this movie.
Oh, boy.
I'll try
Oh,
and
okay.
keep it short.
Right.
So, this is definitely the turning point for the series in multiple ways. In the book, it's the turning point because things are starting to get a little darker, and not everything is as straightforward as the first two.
Mm-hmm.
For the movies, it's a turning point because the first two movies have the look and feel of the books like down 110%.
Yeah.
And then you get to this one and it starts to go by the wayside with the normal clothes, and it gets that Halloween vibe, so it's kind of a little more spooky and creepy. I personally am someone who I realize that this is the most controversial opinion, but I absolutely hate this movie.
Oh, wow.
Like, this is my least favorite Harry Potter movie. Then again, you're gonna be even more frustrated at this. My favorite is the sixth movie.
Really?
Yes.
Oh wow.
Yes, my favorite is the sixth movie because I feel like the sixth one almost gets a little more back on track with being close to the books and feeling like the book, and I like how that's the one where it finally gets to that more darker look to it, which is actually explained in the book, and it makes sense from a Harry Potter fanboy perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas it's something like, since Voldemort has dominion over the Dementors, the Dementors are free to reproduce.
Right.
And when Dementors reproduce, it makes everything gloomy and foggy outside.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, I was like, cool, that makes sense. And this is where everything becomes like, that whole one feels more like a mystery to me than like the other ones. So the reasons that I don't really like Prisoner of Azkaban pretty much stem directly from it being my favorite book.
Oh, okay.
And the mishandling of characters in the movie from my perspective. A recent one that I added to my repertoire from listening to another podcast is the casting of adult characters in the movies. I love Gary Oldman. Gary Oldman does really great as Sirius Black. Sirius Black is my favorite character, and therefore I like Gary Oldman in the position of Sirius Black. But it's weird to have him as Sirius Black when Sirius Black's supposed to be like 30 at that point.
I mean, it's the same thing with Snape. Alan Rickman was like in his 50s, and Snape's supposed to be like early 30s.
Yeah, they're all supposed to be that because Harry's parents die when they're like 21. Yeah, so it's a weird like disconnect for me now, knowing that and like really thinking about it. But my biggest thing for it that it mishandles is it doesn't focus enough on the Marauders. And that to me was like a big integral part of Harry kind of like slowly starting to grow up and thinking of his parents as real people instead of just these mythical like heroes of the wizarding world. Because it gets into like, oh, Fred and George have the Marauders map, here you go, Harry, and then they never explain it again. Whereas in the books it's like, oh no, Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs are Peter Pettigrew, Sirius Black, James Potter, and Remus Lupin. And you never get that anywhere in the movies except for at one point. Like, I think in the fourth one, they offhand, like, call each other nicknames at one point. And I'm like, that undermines the whole part of, like, Harry finally learning that his parents were actual people. And it just feels like, if you don't have that there, then it doesn't ground Harry enough as a character in a way.
Right.
But yeah, it's one of those things. I will concede and say that I understand why a lot of people who just watch the movies love that movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because out of all of them, it is probably the most exciting, and it keeps up the pacing really well. Whereas in the last books, it slowed down a lot, especially the seventh book of the extended camping trip. And the whole point of the extended camping trip is to learn more about Dumbledore, which they don't do in the movie.
Oh my God, yeah.
It's just like, what is even the point of shooting this movie like this if we aren't going to go into Dumbledore's backstory, where he may have been in leagues with Grindelwald at one point, but you don't know, and he had some great opinions about wizards, where he wanted them to kind of be like, he almost thought that wizards were a superior race at that point, but was dabbling with that idea, and later in life realized that he was wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just that a lot of those things are mishandled, and that's why the first two are probably the best to me, because the books are shorter as well. So it's a lot easier to get all of that into one movie, whereas then you get into the later ones and it goes off the rails. I will agree, the saving Sirius scene is wonderful. Harry seeing himself across the lake and realizing that it's not his father is also amazing. They do the movie really well. I'm just a bitter fanboy.
Well, and I think no, but I think you were very fair in like recognizing, like, as someone who, you know, didn't read the book, because I don't know how to read. It's I don't even
a lot too.
I don't even know how I'm on Twitter right now. It's just it all looks like Aztec written in diarrhea.
That's why you're all cheering.
Jesus Christ.
But no, like as someone who only experienced like the rest of the series as movies, this movie is just expertly paced. Like, it's near perfect pacing to me as a movie viewer. But yeah, so I mean, I would love for us to get funding on this podcast so I can afford Hooked on Phonics and go to Sylvan Learning Center, because I really need to learn how to read.
If you want, I can come visit you every now and then. We can read through the books. I'll tuck you into bed, give you a little kiss on the forehead, Blake Jones, and that'll be that.
Will you at least dress up like Annie Sullivan and smack my hand and shove my face in water?
I can probably handle that. I think that's probably a good way to go.
This
I don't know how it'll help you learn to read, but you know.
This Christmas, Jake Small is the miracle worker.
I mean, my daughter's gonna have a very confused view of her father. Just be like getting.
Well, I mean, she already calls the cat dad, so I mean.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, she's already getting confused. Let's just make it even more.
Yeah.
She'll grow up to be a very interesting person that way.
Just imagine Jake with his big beard, you know, dressed up like an old English woman, smacking me across the face while I like moan and yell. Whoa!
The big beard has been toned down a bit. I was getting tired of it.
Okay.
I still have the front like a Green Arrow bit that's super long, but the sides have been taken off.
Well, you should use the trimmings to like do the alphabet in shapes for me. That would be.
I don't know if I have enough. I'd probably for the last couple letter have to use some pubes if that's all right.
Is that Millennial Braille?
Our one loyal viewer right now has to be listening to this being like, what the fuck? Which shout out to Joey. Joey, who I have on social media. I Snapchatted him the link to the Twitch. Back with episode 2, episode 2 or 3, and he's been messaging me being like, oh wow, this part was great, that part was great. So yeah, shout out to him for being like our first loyal listener. So
thank you for coming out for my episode, Joey. If you are out and listening right now, this is what happens when like basically the human version of a cave troll decides to get on microphone with friends after 8 years.
Yeah, shout out to Joey. May all the good things in life happen to you and only you.
Okay.
Joey, the official #1 fan of the Fat Minute.
All right, okay, don't. All right, get your tongue out of his ass.
But it's warm.
How do we know Joey doesn't like it?
Yeah.
Joey, let me know if you like it. Well, you can contact me on Twitter at kangashark_.
I need this conversation to end.
All right. Okay, we can move on.
All right, next movie, Napoleon Dynamite.
Oh fuck yeah.
Yeah. Another instant cult classic with so many quotable moments.
Oh, you guys are gonna hate me.
Have you not seen this movie?
No, I have seen it.
Oh,
Okay.
he hates it, Donnie. I'm going to
I
spoil it
do.
now. He
I
hates
hate
it.
this movie so much.
Well, you're gonna shut the fuck up for a second because I'm gonna gush over this fucking movie.
Please do before I complain.
Fucking Uncle Rico for starters. Like everybody has a fucking Uncle Rico. Just
Oh, yeah.
how much you want to bet I could throw a football over the mountains?
It's just like the fakest fucking wig
Yeah.
ever.
Fucking,
I'm picturing it in my head. I've seen this movie a lot, so I'll know exactly what we're talking about.
do you take the bus to school? No, I ride my bike. What kind of bike you got? It's a sledgehammer. Dang, you got shocks, pegs, lucky. Fucking
No.
Napoleon, give me some of your thoughts. No,
No way, get your own.
I haven't eaten anything today. God.
Just kicks his cargo pants.
Like, I just love how the whole movie, like, it doesn't really have like a singular linear plot. It's just a chronicle of like a semester in the life of a random kid.
Yeah.
And because of that, it's a very relatable movie, and because of like how Napoleon is like 5 tiers more awkward than any other kid in history, it just adds to that in a way, which is kind of ironic. I mean, it's just a fun, quotable movie.
Yeah.
Blake, you go first.
A couple things that, my best opinions of this movie actually came from other people. I remember one of my old high school classmates that I performed in the talent show with. He went by the nickname OCG. His compliment of this movie, and I didn't notice it until he said it, but it made the movie even more ingenious. He was saying, the thing I love about Napoleon Dynamite, the great thing about that, what makes it perhaps a better comedy than other comedies at the time was when I would see Anchorman or, basically anything with Will Ferrell, I'd be like, you know what? Nobody acts like that in real life, whatever.
Yeah.
But I saw Napoleon Dynamite, and I'm like, well, shit, I go to school with motherfuckers who act like that. And it's like that's what made the movie kind of ingenious. It's like, yeah, it's like you see Step Brothers. It's like nobody acts like that in real life.
Yeah.
But then you see Napoleon Dynamite. It's like, well, shit, I had biology with that kid.
Yeah.
And then our one friend Nick, he was watching it for the first time on DVD when it had just come out to Blockbuster, and finally halfway through the movie, and what the movie's like, 90 minutes long, 100 minutes long?
It's not a long movie.
No, it's like their mom finally goes, how far are we into this? How much time has passed? And his older brother goes, it's about halfway finished. And she goes, nothing is happening. And he just goes, exactly.
Yeah.
But no, it's I just love it. I love this movie. I mean, it's just I don't know. It's okay. Come on. You know what, Jake? Go ahead and ruin the night.
Trust me, I won't.
Welcome to Dequan's Dance Grooves. Are you ready to get your groove on? Yes.
Bow to your sensei.
Bow to your sensei.
Okay,
Well, that was a ripoff.
I totally won't ruin the mood. Trust me. This will be a very easy to explain one, and I'm not going to shit all over Napoleon Dynamite. So, as I said, I grew up in a small town. My graduating class was like 32.
Oh, Jesus.
Jesus.
Yeah, it was tiny. So I only had in my actual class, I had 2-3 good friends. Over all of school, I had 6 good friends. So a lot of them weren't really talking about this movie. They had talked about it here and there. Like, oh yeah, it's pretty funny. The rest of the school loved it. They thought it was the most amazing movie they had ever seen. And I was like, okay, I'll sit down and watch it. Watched it once and was like, I don't get it. I didn't laugh through any of it. I was just kind of like, I don't understand. So then I went to school and talked to them about it. I was like, yeah, I didn't like it. And they were like, oh, it takes a few times. You got to watch at least 2 or 3 times. I have seen Napoleon Dynamite 5 times, and I'm still here like, I don't get it. What's the point of this movie? And now, hearing the way that you guys have told it, I'm like, oh, okay. I get it a little better now. Because we didn't have there wasn't anyone in our school, since it was so small, who was super awkward. Me and my friends were the awkward kids, and we weren't that awkward. So I think part of it, it's a similar problem I have with Superbad. Like, I love Superbad, but I had to stop watching Superbad because all the people who would bully me loved Superbad. And I'm sitting there going, this movie's about me, you assholes. Like, are you
Yeah.
kidding right
Yeah.
now? You like this movie, but you make fun of me? Like, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a thing like that where it felt like the people who were watching it and liked the movie were doing it in a mean-spirited way almost.
Yeah.
To me.
Oh,
So
that's
it just
fair.
kind of made me go like, I don't really get it. Like, looking back on it and like thinking of it, there's like Uncle Rico, like I think one of the few things I laughed at was when Uncle Rico tosses the steak at Napoleon and hits him in the face.
Oh, that's great.
That was it's even funnier now because I'm like, what an idiot to waste a perfectly good steak like that. But he probably picked it up off the ground and ate it. There's that. There's like the Napoleon's brother dating the black, getting married to the black lady who's like 3 times his size.
Yeah.
It's like, that makes perfect sense. Like, there are so many relationships that work out that way. Where it's just like, wow, that's an interesting pairing that I never would have thought of because I'm sheltered and live in a white community. That came out a little more harsh than I meant it to, but you know what I mean. And even like the interpretive dance scene at the end, like I was always like, I don't care. Like, whatever. It doesn't matter to me. I could see how that would make sense. It's also a funny thing is my brother loves that movie, and he does not seem like the type of person that would love that movie. He loves it so much. He has I think he has the 4 collection Funko Pops, including the Dancing Napoleon one, and it's one of the ones he has displayed right next to his X-Files ones. And like, I'm amazed that he is someone who likes that movie, but that happens.
I think my 2 personal favorite moments, and this movie has a lot of moments in it, not just scenes, not just jokes, but just little moments, was when they tried the time machine. He's like, hold on,
Yeah.
I have to put in the time crystal.
Yeah.
but like it zaps his balls.
Yeah, it's just that little teeth-shaped things he has to put in between his legs.
Yeah.
But he goes, it's a piece of junk, it doesn't work, and all of a sudden you hear off camera, well, I could have told you that. And it's Uncle Rico, and he's holding himself, and just the way he's positioning himself as he's like basically holding down his fried dick was just, and then the after credit scene, which is the marriage of LaFonda and Kip.
Yeah.
And they ask, do you take this woman to be your wife? Do you take this man to be your husband? And they say, I do. And like, you see like LaFonda's side of the aisle, and you see her brother. Her brother just leans forward and puts his hand on his head like a face palm. And it's like, it's so small, it's so subtle, but the way that dude did it, it was just perfect. But yeah, no, it's.
I love that you brought up the time machine, because apparently that's based on like a true story that happened to the director's little brother. Yeah, like apparently like in the early days of the internet and eBay, like the director's younger brother had bought like a quote unquote time machine pretty much like that off of some random dude on the internet. And it came with like these crystals that you were supposed to put in like the slot that would send you back in time. And it came with like a whole bunch of different kinds of currency from different time periods, so you would have money to spend wherever you went.
Yeah.
And like it's just a funny story.
It's like X-ray specs from the back of the comic books.
Right.
It's just, and it's also like you can't deny, and I'm not automatically assuming or accusing that you would deny, but it's like you can't deny like the heartwarming success story of it all. Just that like, a director, like an amateur, a wannabe, an inspiring director, and I think it was his brother. Like it's 2 brothers. They both wrote and then one directed. Like they had this little movie in their mind, and they're just like, okay, well, let's go for it. Like it just became this little thing that could, and you went from like this obscure little independent darling. And you could only afford to pay the star of your movie $1,000. Like John Heater, he only made $1,000 before this, movie. I guess the marketing and like the merchandise and stuff.
Yeah.
Like you had this little movie that could, and then fast forward to like half a year later, it's like in stores everywhere, and it's on T-shirts, and they have mugs and plates, and like it just became this big thing. Like
it eventually got its own Fox cartoon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
it's just
mind.
Yeah. It's just you can't help but feel happy for the people that made it.
See, to me, that is almost like that's almost the American dream. with how ingrained we are with entertainment, like having a little movie like that just skyrocket.
Yeah.
Like, I'd just be like, cool, I'm going to buy a little house now and like spend this money very sparingly and hope to never have to work again.
Yeah.
And but then also I like the point you brought up, Jake, about Superbad, because it's like, I just remember there would be dudes to be like, oh yeah, that McLovin kid, he's the best. I love him. He's awesome. And I'm like, dude, if that guy was a real person, if that character was real, you would send him death threats every day.
Yeah.
Like, fuck off.
You guys would be the bullies at the beginning of the movie who knocked the Slurpees out of their hands.
Yeah.
Oh, and he hockey spit on his hocked a loogie on his shirt and whatever. But he looked like discount Heath Ledger. But
my favorite
nice mullet asshole.
My favorite scene in Napoleon Dynamite is in the beginning when Napoleon comes home and he's just like, "Way to stay home and eat all the freaking chips, Kip." Napoleon, don't be jealous because I've been here talking to internet babes all day. Besides, we both know I'm training to become a cage fighter. Let's move on to our... You got something to say, Blake?
No, I'm good. Thank you. Thank you, though.
Move on. Next movie, Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 2 took everything that was great in Spider-Man and turned it up to 11.
Yeah.
I mean, just a great cast, a great story. I mean, Doc Ock is just awesome in that fucking movie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And it played to the strengths of the original movie, where I mentioned before, Spider-Man was very different than, superhero movies we had gotten before because it was liked by everybody. And I remember parents liking that movie more than their kids. Spider-Man 2 even much more. Like, in Spider-Man 2, it's very much a drama movie with the superhero aspect being a backdrop, kind of a second thought to it.
Yeah.
Blake, what do you got to say?
I love this movie so damn much.
Yeah.
Like it fucks so hard.
Yeah.
Okay, I've been trying to say it like about like X2 or whatever, but like this was the Dark Knight before the Dark Knight came out.
Mm-hmm.
For 4 years, this was the great superhero sequel, and it has a near perfect villain who, as far as I'm concerned, has not been outdone since in the Spider-Man brand. I like Jake Gyllenhaal's Mysterio. I thought he was cool, but it's just like Alfred Molina as Doc Ock is just the great tragic villain. He was the great tragic villain before we got to see Aaron Eckhart as Harvey Dent.
Mm-hmm.
And the scene of like him stealing his suit back from J. Jonah Jameson.
Yeah.
And he's just like, he's a thief. I want Spider-Man. It's like, does like this swirling newspaper and he busts through it. He's swinging through New York, and then it zooms out of Doc Ock's sunglasses and stuff. Like that whole shot is just so goddamn iconic.
I will say, Spider-Man 2 may not be my favorite Spider-Man movie, but it does have a scene that's like perfect. Like if you need to explain the motif of Spider-Man, where the scene where he tries to like save people from the burning building without his powers because he's given up being Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And then when he hears that like somebody still died, and that's when he's like, I need to be Spider-Man again. That sense of responsibility, that scene is like, that's how you explain Spider-Man to somebody.
In hindsight, the relationship of Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst is flawed. It's not perfect. But it then has my other favorite moment when he saves her at the very end, and he's like lifting up that big wall that's almost crushing her, and it's Tobey Maguire's voice that makes it perfect, because he has that like voice where like you can tell he's older but he still sounds younger, and it's just his natural voice, and he's like struggling to hold up the wall or whatever, and he's like, Mary Jane, in case we die, and she's like, you do love me, and he just shakes his head yes. Like, I love that moment so goddamn much. Like, I can't compliment this movie enough.
This is definitely the movie where their relationship made the most sense.
Yeah. And it's just, and I just love all the supporting characters. I love the Daily Bugle people, and
that's so good.
I love his landlord like so much. I was just, like Mr. Dickovich and just like, oh, I'm
What's
sorry.
high? Can I spend it?
Yeah, it's like, what's sorry? Can I spend it? It's like, it promises we're crackers. My daughter would be fat. It's like,
Walks
what?
up to the bathroom, knocks hello. Landlord comes out, goes in, closes door, peeks back out. Rent?
Hey, let's not forget an amazing cameo by Ashy Larry in this movie.
Oh my God, yes.
Whoa,
He
he
stole
stole
that
that
guy's
guy's
pizzas.
Yeah, it's just
Okay.
this movie has it all. This movie has it all. It has a great villain. It has a romance that makes sense, and it has Ashy Larry. Like,
it's a perfect combination.
yeah. You
So
go
this
ahead,
was,
Jake.
This was like the one bit of like quote unquote research I did before coming onto this podcast. When you asked me to be on, you were like, "Oh yeah, we're doing 2004." I was like, "Okay, let me see what's that." I typed in 2004 movies, and the first thing I saw was Spider-Man 2, and I was like, "I need to rewatch this. I need to rewatch this right now." So that very day, sat down, rewatched all of Spider-Man 2. Part of my reason for wanting to rewatch that is I've been kind of throwing the idea in my head around doing a podcast or a YouTube show based on movies, but everyone does that, so it's kind of a thing that comes and goes.
Mm-hmm.
And last year I started rewatching the first Spider-Man, and I had to stop halfway through because there were just so many things that I was like, I'm not into it this time. Like, I felt like Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst were kind of flat at times. Of course, Willem Dafoe kind of takes it all and runs with it in that aspect. Like, nobody can outdo Willem Dafoe. I loved when you guys were talking about that, and Blake brought up the scene where he's getting in the machine and they put the clamps over, and he goes, "Ooh, cold."
Ooh, cold.
That was always one of my, like, he is so weird in that movie type of moments. But it's that, and there's the scene on the rooftop in that first movie where they're both talking to each other with their masks on, and it's basically just two action figures wiggling back and forth. That scene is so awful. Like, I was like, oh my God, I can't do this. And then it has like they're at the parade, and Macy Gray's on stage playing a song, and I'm like, Macy Gray, I forgot about her.
It's
She
so
was
dated.
popular. Yeah, that dated it immediately.
Yeah.
But rewatching the second one, I was blown away by how amazingly well it held up, how totally improved both Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst are in that. Like, they actually have like it feels like they have a bigger range of emotion in it.
Yeah.
It just, everything about it, I was like, oh my God, this one is so good. And like, I feel like I could never watch the first one again, and like, unless I was with a group of people and it was just on in the background. Second one I could watch anytime. Third one I could watch with a group of people as we rip it limb from limb, because that's like all you can do with that movie in a lot of ways. But the second one, it's a sequel, whereas the first one is a good prototype to go by if you're doing an origin story. The sequel is the prototype you need to go for a superhero story in general.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it feels, the comedy hits so well in it. It literally feels like a Marvel movie. Like, I know that sounds dumb to say, it's Spider-Man, but it feels like the new, like, MCU style Marvel movie, like the good ones, where the comedy is perfectly timed. You have a villain who's amazing. You have all these like silly moments because it's Sam Raimi, like the moment Doc Ock has Aunt May and he's climbing up the building and it goes into the office building, and the woman walks over to the window and a claw bursts through, and she screams, runs back and forth, and runs straight to the camera and screams in the camera's face. Oh, it's so hilarious. Between that, Aunt May smacking him in the face with an umbrella, like, there are so many good moments. And Blake, I love that you brought out how perfect Doc Ock is in this movie.
Yeah.
Rewatching it, I was amazed at not only how perfect he is, but how there isn't a ton of focus on him either. Like, he still stands as a great villain when he disappears through like the middle of the movie at one point when Peter's losing his powers. And it's just, he becomes such perfect. It's nice to have a villain who's like, when they find out who Spider-Man is, that's what kind of snaps them back to reality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Where he's just like, oh my God, I'm starting to realize what I'm doing, and this kid who looked up to me is now trying to stop me because he knows what I'm doing is terrible.
Yeah.
It's such a hard hitting thing. And on top of that, it has like the best cameos of every movie. It's got a simple Stan Lee cameo, a blink and you'll miss it cameo. It's got Ashy Larry in there. I was amazed rewatching it during the train scene when he's holding on to the building, the quintessential hold things together scene that's in every Spider-Man movie now.
Yeah.
Over his left shoulder, Phil Lamar's there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's the first. He's the second hand you see come out and grab him when they start Jesus dragging him to the back of the.
And then comedian Hal Sparks was in the elevator.
Yep,
one of
Hal
the main
Sparks
guys on
elevator.
VH1. I love the whatever, you know.
And Joey Diaz, big comedian, he's in the movie too. He's the first one who steps in front of Doc Hart and says, "You're gonna have to go through me."
And Emily, Emily Deschanel's like the receptionist, like, I'm not paying for those pizzas.
Yeah, you're late. I'm not paying for that. No, and it's just how this movie like improves upon everything. Like the scene in the first movie where all the New Yorkers are throwing trash at the Green Goblin, being like, "Leave him alone." It's like I'm like, okay, I'm sorry, that's so corny. But I love the moment where it's just like Doc Ock comes for him, and all the people get in his way on the train. They're like, "You want to go to him? You got to go through me." Me too, and me.
It's such a perfect example of like how you can have two scenes that are supposed to have the similar message, but miss on the pitch entirely in one of them. Because in that scene, it's like they're all throwing out like, "You mess with one of us, you mess with all of us here in New York City, boy." And it's just like, no, stop right there. And then whenever you have the other one, it's literally people gathered around him going like, "Oh my God, he's so young, and he's did all of this to save our lives."
Yeah.
So they totally understand.
And to expand on that, you know, movies, two different movies having the same thing have, you know, opposite effects almost. I mean, the subplot with Peter losing his powers because he doesn't want to be Spider-Man anymore. Superman 2 basically did the same thing with, you know, Superman not wanting to be Superman anymore, so he gave up his powers. But it is done so much better in Spider-Man 2 because he doesn't choose to give up his powers. He's just losing them because he's fucking depressed. And then he realizes, oh shit, I need to do this because these people rely on me. Whereas in Superman 2, it's literally, this being Superman is hard. I don't want to be Superman anymore. 10 minutes later, gets his ass kicked in a bar. All right, I want to be Superman again.
But Spider-Man 2 has the advantage of coming out 24 years later. But
that's true.
I mean, but it's just the beautiful moment on the train where like the two kids are just like, "Don't worry, we won't tell anybody." Like, it's just, it's so, God, it's so fucking good.
There are two little things I want to mention from this movie. Rewatching it, I noticed that there are a few times, and it's a nice touch that I think actually kind of adds to it. There are a few times where just behind the eye frames, you can see his eye just faintly.
Yeah.
Just enough to see like him blink and things like that. The other one is, I know there's a big, I had heard a big theory going around that in that movie, Aunt May knows that Peter is Spider-Man. And I feel like it's a little hinted at, but I feel like what's more important and more prevalent is that Robbie at the Daily Bugle knows he's Spider-Man.
Oh, he totally does.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never caught on to that before. Rewatching it this time, I was like, when they was talking about like, "Oh, this whole thing happened," he looks at him and goes, "I heard Spider-Man was there." And just stares him down for a second. I was like, "Oh my God, Robbie knows. How does Robbie know? Wow, Robbie's probably the smartest person at the Bugle."
Have you ever noticed that Spider-Man and Peter Parker are never on Facebook at the same time?
Yeah.
You almost made me forget about like, this movie has the best Aunt May scene, like when she's telling Peter about how every generation needs that hero, that one person that taught them to hold on. Yeah. Mm-hmm. How they would wait for hours just to see the person who taught them to wait just a little bit longer and hold on and be brave. And
that's another even parallel for this movie too, is she's telling him that when literally one of the last times we saw him as Spider-Man, he was telling Aunt May to just hang on as she's holding on to her umbrella about to fall to her death.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's literally like the speech she gave him was inspired by himself. Like, mind blown.
And this also has one of the better, as great as he is in the first movie, this has one of the better Willem Dafoe moments where he's just like, "Harry, I'm home."
Yeah.
It's just like, avenge me. It's like, no.
Avenge me!
Yeah. It's just,
is it Willem Dafoe or Mermaid Man?
it's like it's evil, but it's just. And then the best thing ever was when Avengers Endgame came out with those posters that said "Avenge the Fallen," and they just photoshopped Willem Dafoe with that face. But oh god,
let's move on to our next movie now, before we get a little too off the rails.
Oh,
yeah.
Anchorman.
I love Scotch. Scotch. Sorry.
I have never seen Anchorman. I've only seen Anchorman 2.
I'm sorry.
I mean, I honestly enjoyed Anchorman 2. I thought it was pretty fucking funny. I mean, I don't remember too much of it now, but I remember laughing my ass off in the theaters when I saw it, but I've yet to see Anchorman 1. But I know you two are going to have a lot to say about it, so why don't you go on ahead?
Go ahead, Jake.
I got in trouble for watching this movie in an unexpected way. I didn't get in trouble because it's a movie I shouldn't have been watching. I got in trouble because it was coming on like HBO or something like that, and I was 12 at the time. I had been home alone many a time. So
Did you get pay-per-view without permission?
No, I didn't get pay-per-view without permission. What happened was my grandma lived with us, and she had to like run to the bank and the post office or something like that, and she was like, "Hey, I got to do some things. You got to come with me." And I went, "No, I'm watching a movie." And she straight up was like, dropped it, waited until Dad came home, and then I got chewed out for a good few minutes for telling Grandma no because I wanted to watch Anchorman. It's totally worth it. Totally worth it. 110%. Sorry, Grandma.
Fuck you, Grandma.
That's probably disappointing. But yeah, I at 12 years old or 13 or however old I was when I finally got to watch it, it was hilarious. I had never been a big Will Ferrell fan. Still not really a huge one. I think this is like his best role because he puts on the deeper voice, so he doesn't have that higher pitch Will Ferrell thing going on.
I hate that fucking voice so much.
On top of that, you got Ant-Man in there, and you got Michael Scott in there, and it just makes for a fun time all around.
And then the cowboy hat guy who still isn't famous.
Yep, cowboy hat guy. Discount Woody Harrelson. Woody Harrelson.
Woody Harrell.
Just a whole thing there. Kids, don't live in Colorado and do drugs for a while.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, again, it's just one of those movies where every great thing there is to say about it has already been said by everyone else so many times. But yeah, you should still see it one day, Donnie, because it has more focus than the sequel. The sequel was just like, they were just throwing shit at the wall just to see what stuck. But you were going to say something, Jake?
There is like the one thing about it is it's good that it's set in like the 70s as well, because there are a couple of jokes in there that are like ooh by today's standards.
Yeah.
Like literally Steve Carell introducing his character by saying, "I'm what you would call is mentally retarded."
Yeah.
Like it's like, oh wow, yeah, that's kind of funny. As he's putting like butter on like a shoe or something.
He's putting butter. He's buttering the inside of a toaster, I think.
Oh, is that what it is?
with a knife.
It's been a while since I've seen it, so.
It's like,
yeah,
there's
so many good moments in that. Jack Black's cameo is fucking amazing.
And then I mean, yeah, just like what's this? Steve Carell. He's just the dumbest person throughout the whole movie, and then finally, the epilogue ends with them saying he's now a top advisor to the Bush White House.
Yes. Yeah. He has some of the great moments in there too. Like, where did you get a trident? I don't know. And then later he's like, I stabbed a man with a trident. Well, yeah, you might want to lay a little low. You're probably wanted for murder.
Yeah, and that was like one of the first like memes that made me go, wow, that's kind of weird how that became a meme like 10 years later. But the whole wow, that escalated quickly came from Anchorman.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Sex Panther, 60% of the time it works every time. But yeah, the moral of the story is you're missing out, Donnie. You should check it out sometime.
Yeah.
All right.
They do a barbershop quartet version of Afternoon Delight.
Yeah.
Between the four of them.
I can get behind that.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to our next movie then. Team America: World Police. I saw this movie. I saw this movie for the first time with you, Blake. You showed me this movie.
Yeah.
And oh my God, what a ride! I mean, this movie is literally the result of Trey Parker and Matt Stone taking everything that they couldn't make work in a South Park episode and just turning it into a movie.
I don't think there's ever been that much giggling in one night from you.
Oh my god, just fucking.
I remember.
Go ahead.
I remember the part that just broke you. Finally, I mean, you were laughing at the whole thing, but the part that the part that just broke you was when they're doing the song "America, Fuck Yeah."
Yeah.
And it gets to the lyric. It gets to the lyric where the guy says, "So lick my buns and suck on my."
It's so stupid. It's so stupid. So immature, but it's the greatest thing ever at the same time.
He doesn't say kiss my ass. He says lick my buns.
Oh my god.
Like, this movie came out at the perfect time because it was just a giant parody of American culture in general, especially with the War on Terror at the time.
Yeah.
Oh my god, it was so great. And the
it's
Matt Damon puppet. Fucking
it's a better Michael Bay movie than any Michael Bay movie.
Yeah. Freedom cost $1.05.
Yeah. And it's just I love the story of the Matt Damon puppet because they wrote that on the fly, like, because originally they had ordered, like, okay, we need a puppet of Samuel L. Jackson, Sean Penn, George Clooney, Matt Damon, and they all came in and they took the Matt Damon puppet out of the box and they're just like they said the same thing that other people would say later on. Why does he look like that? And they're like, Matt Damon. and then years later, like, I remember seeing I think it was a Huffington Post article, an interview of him in like 2016, where Matt Damon says, "Yeah, I still don't understand why I'm like that, like why they made me that way." But yeah, no, the Matt Damon, and it is great because I think Matt Damon doesn't get roasted enough. I'm sorry,
it's understandable.
It may seem Siri, but not Riri.
Oh, that's and that's another thing. Like, it's such a great musical. Like,
I mean, Matt and Trey definitely have like a weird talent with musicals. I mean, if you watch South Park Bigger, Longer, and Uncut, like, there's so many great jams in that movie.
I've always wanted to see the Book of Mormon too.
I want to also, yeah.
Okay, that'd be fun. So for me, this is another movie that I just haven't seen. I know a fair bit about it, little bits here and there. I've seen some scenes. Like, of course, I've seen them doing the Kim Jong-il impression and like the puppet sex scene, which is just ridiculous. But when I was, this is going to sound odd after the Anchorman comment, but my parents were a little strict on what I could and couldn't watch. Anchorman was definitely one that I snuck around and didn't tell anybody that I watched. And even when it came to that point and Dad confronted me, I was like, there was a movie on that I really wanted to see. That's all I said. And he just pushed past it, didn't ask what the movie was or anything. But they were very on top of being like, no, you cannot watch South Park. You can have all the stuffed figures of the South Park characters, but you cannot watch the show. And I don't think I watched an episode of South Park till I was like, I think I watched a couple when I was 12 and was kind of like, oh yeah, that's funny, but I didn't like start watching it on my own until I was like 16.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the Matt Stone and Trey Parker stuff just kind of passed me by. I did eventually watch basketball with my buddy Seth at his house, or basketball, and that was just
like a stupid fucking movie.
It is, but I was fine with that because we were stupid kids. We were the kids who were like the Jackass emulation type of kids who were like, I was the ringleader who was like, yes, this will kill you, so don't do it, or nah, you'll be fine. So there was, I didn't get a whole lot of the Matt Stone and Trey Parker stuff until later, and now it's like nobody has it streaming, and I don't think about that movie often, so I haven't gotten around to it. But yeah, America, fuck yeah.
So lick my buns and suck on my balls.
Let's move on to our last movie of the evening. The Incredibles.
The best Fantastic Four movie ever made.
Pretty fucking much.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing. The Incredibles is one of my least favorite Pixar movies. Like, the only movie I dislike more than The Incredibles as far as Pixar movies go is Cars.
Yeah.
I remember watching The Incredibles as a kid and even as an adult and just not really getting into it. It just comes and goes for me.
Mm-hmm.
What do you guys got to say?
I was very content when I originally saw it. Opening weekend, first time in theaters. And I saw it with some buddies, and yeah, it would have been 8th grade. I mean, I enjoyed it and stuff. I have to be like one of the only people in the world apparently that didn't like beg for a sequel for like 15 years straight.
Yeah.
Because it's just one of those things where like I just accepted it was a one and done. Like, okay, they made it, and yeah, whatever. Because of that, it is probably one of the most overrated Pixar movies. I don't have any beef with it, but it's just when certain people like have it at the top of their list, I'm like, okay, y'all, it wasn't that great.
Yeah.
And it's actually funny because like as far as like aesthetic and like I guess emotion, like tone and mood, it feels more like a parody of James Bond than it does superheroes. Like it has more of that like 1960s Bond feel to it.
Definitely.
And especially like the Roger Moore era. And but yeah, I mean, I think it's whatever. I mean, you got some memes out of Syndrome saying when everyone is super, no one will be, and you have that like book that's like completely highlighted. It's like when everything is highlighted, nothing will be. But yeah, it's.
Was this this is gonna sound weird, but was this the start of the Pixar Thick Moms?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I thought this was because like that's oh god, this is all gonna go very downhill now that I'm thinking of it. So I'll start.
We're already at the bottom of the hill, Jack and Jill.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I will start by saying this is probably one of my top Pixar movies. Honestly, I don't have like a strong opinion on Pixar movies a whole lot. At the age I am now, like a lot of times animated movies just don't do it for me. Like everyone was like, when Toy Story 4 came out, I was like, I really don't care. I saw Toy Story 3 sitting next to Blake in a movie theater. Do you remember at the very end when that kid said, "Bye, Buzz, bye, Woody," and we both looked at each other and nearly cried?
Yeah, that was beautiful.
Wanted to make sure it was. Oh, that was perfect. But like, I haven't seen a whole lot of the new stuff. I did go see Incredibles 2. I was not one of the people who was like, oh, this needs a sequel right now. I was like, sequel would be cool, but you know.
Yeah.
Pixar, they'll do whatever they want.
Mm-hmm.
They'll make a million Toy Stories probably before they get to that. So when it came out, I was like, oh, this is interesting. Went and saw it in theaters and was like, that was basically the same movie. I'm cool with that, I guess. Because I haven't seen the first one in a while. Like, you know, it's fine. The screenslaver stuff gave me a headache, though.
Yeah.
Kind of like that was a bit obnoxious for them to do. But I'm guessing that me as a teenager, at that age, getting into like, you know, adolescence and all that stuff, part of the reason why I like that movie so much is probably Miss Incredible. Now that I think of it, because I grew up to be an ass man. And now I'm just looking back at it like, oh my god, I have been conditioned this way from Pixar, haven't I?
Oh my
Holy shit.
God!
This is a breakthrough. I'm having a major breakthrough on your podcast, guys. Like it's all coming together.
Oh man, talk about a left turn.
I mean, it's that's why I said I was going to get to the bottom of this. Like I think
you got to the bottom
before.
All right.
Like, oh yeah, I sped down that hill quicker than Sonic the Hedgehog in this aspect. I mean, you know. Kind of surprised
that. Okay.
This is probably the raunchiest episode so far, isn't it? It's close. Definitely close.
It's all you, boo.
Cool. I'll take it. I'm happy to be the creepy pervy uncle.
Oh, Jesus.
I guess.
Well, speaking of uncles you don't want at the Thanksgiving dinner table, let's roll it back to some more cultural topics and talk about the 2004 election. Why don't we?
I wasn't done with The Incredibles.
All right, we'll go on then.
I forget now.
Then we're gonna talk about the 2004 election.
Okay, I think I remember now.
Oh, tough shit. I've made my decision.
Yeah.
I don't have a whole lot to say about this election. I know you're going to have some stuff to say, Blake, but the only thing I really have to say about the 2004 election is John Kerry didn't win because he was fucking boring. Like,
Yeah.
even at that age, I was like, George Bush is going to win because John Kerry is fucking one-dimensional. Like,
Yeah.
John Kerry's been in politics for what, like 30-some years now? I couldn't tell you one fucking thing about him.
That like when that all came about and everyone was like, he's like Herman Munster. Like that's the perfect way to describe like him.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Do you guys remember anyone saying that? Because I heard that.
Yes.
No,
yes,
I don't.
Yes.
And really, for me, like this was on the cusp of when I started paying attention to politics. Really,
Mhm.
I think it was like this year I kind of started a little bit sprinkled in there, but over the next 2 years was when I would discover the Daily Show, and then I'd
Yeah.
kind of start paying a bit more attention. The only thing I remember about this election is those Jib Jab musical shorts.
Yeah.
Holy crap! Those were like before Jib Jab became like, put your family's face on a twerking elf and send it to them for Christmas.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
when it was just like, we're going to make funny parody songs. It was kind of like, oh, okay, I see what they're doing. And that's really all I remember from it because, I was 12 and couldn't vote that year.
Yeah.
Blake?
Yeah, I mean, like, but say what you want about whether or not he was cool or whatever. It was just like the better man didn't win. Like, I just remember at the time, like, it was just like, oh yeah, he's definitely gonna win. He's got to win. It's just like George Bush was just such a fucking fumble, and despite all the fumbling on George Bush's part, like John Kerry just somehow missed the dunk. And it's. I mean, I like him though. I mean, he's a war hero. Like that's, and
I mean, I don't have anything against the guy personally. I'm just saying, like, I couldn't tell you anything about him. Like,
well, I mean, and especially in hindsight, it's even easier to say that because, like, when we get to 2008, we'll talk about like probably the coolest fucking candidate that ever ran.
Yeah.
But it's just, it is weird though how like. At this point, it looks like the Vietnam War will have never produced a president. That's just kind of weird. You would have thought that the generation that had to deal with the last draft and was just so jaded and just so, I guess, felt betrayed. Like they would have produced so many more candidates for president. And yeah, I mean, like we had John Kerry in 2004 and then John McCain in 2008. I don't know why apparently only guys with the name John served in Vietnam, but yeah, it's kind of weird. I remember coming home that day because they weren't able to call it until halfway through the next day.
mm-hmm.
That George Bush had won re-election, and I went home. I walked in the living room. I looked at my mom. My mom is like, she's the reason why I'm into politics like I am. And I walked into the room and I didn't say anything. She didn't say anything. I guess one of us was waiting for the other person to say something first. She just got up from the couch and said, I don't want to talk about it. And she left the room. And then a few days later, it finally hit her and she just started crying just because she just absolutely hates George Bush. But yeah, no, it was just real. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, in a way, the 2004 election is kind of like a precursor to this year's election because the current president running for re-election should be the easiest fucking opponent to beat ever.
Yeah.
And the Democrat Party just did not somehow manage to not produce, I don't want to say a great candidate, but they did not produce a strong candidate. I mean, Joe Biden is a much stronger candidate than John Kerry is for sure, but he's still very divisive. So,
I mean, I'm having. I mean, I guess the fun part of the podcast is over, but
We'll get back to it.
I'm having fucking nightmares over it right now. I mean, every night I'm having a dream where I wake up and I don't mean to fast forward. I always say that, but yeah, it's just like what you said, Donnie. He should be the easiest. He should be the easiest opponent.
yeah.
I mean, it's just like it's almost like you couldn't ask for a bigger fuck up.
Yeah.
And
somehow we still fumble it.
I mean, he got more votes, I guess. Like he won his primaries. I don't know what that. He seems to be the guy that so many other people picked. And I like him. I personally like him. I don't know. It's just weird. It's just weird how like we had so many younger candidates, newer candidates, fresh faces and newer names, and in the end, it just came down to older guys.
There's a lot of context and nuances related to all of that would be worthy of a show in and of itself.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a big fault of the Democratic Party at this moment that they almost seem like they're. I know he did win his primaries and all that, but it almost seems like he's the safe choice for the older generation in a way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of the whole past few years have just been complete insanity, and I'm surprised my head hasn't exploded from it. And it's just like, it just feels like it's not ever going to get better in a way to me. I mean, I don't mean, that's a bad way to put it. I don't necessarily mean it's not gonna get better, because I feel like it'll get better for the people, but it'll be a different type of struggle than we've had before.
Yeah.
If Biden is elected, it'll be a whole new ball game almost of struggle that like I don't even know.
Well, one of the biggest, and I'm sorry, I know we've kind of like steered into a different conversation here, but I mean, as long as we're able to keep talking, it is what it is. But it was like what you said, Donnie, it parallels, I guess, in a way. I think one of the main debates in his defense is that they see him as a return to normalcy, and how the last few years have just been so abnormal and stuff. But then you have the people that are arguing the point like, well, what you considered normal before was still part of the problem.
Yeah.
And I don't want anybody listening to this to think that like I'm down on him now. Like I do like him. I mean, like I'm gonna vote for him. And
I'll be the first to tell you I'm gonna vote for him too.
I actually have my absentee ballots sitting on my desk right now.
Yeah, I'm waiting for mine. I mean, I'll be the first to tell you that. I'm just saying that, as long as we're on the subject, there were so many better options we could have gone with.
Yeah. And I guess, like, for me, it was just like, because I had my favorite picked out from the very beginning, and then he was the first to step out. And then I was just like, well, I just had the mindset where I'm like, well, you know what? There's no sense in me getting all huffing and puffing because I'm just going to vote for whoever the fuck it is anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, I would just love to have that like 2007 going into 2008 Barack Obama energy once again. Like, God damn, that's like, whew, I've never done drugs, but I just imagine that's what it feels like doing a bump of coke. Like,
yeah, we need someone who's personable again, rather than just another politician.
Yeah.
And it's even Bernie is like, he wasn't super personable. He's very serious though, and that's kind of like a whole different feel to it.
Well, it's also you could tell Bernie really fucking cares on an intimate level, which is something a lot of people are not used to from politicians.
Mm-hmm.
I say that as I guess one of the things that I've found that I like about Joe Biden now is that it's just he kind of has like the charm of like that grandfather or whatever. I don't know. Like there's several moments where he actually does remind me of my pop, and you can say that's like kind of biased or superficial or whatever, but I don't know. And I just like he speaks about empathy and grief in, I guess, in a very excellent way. It's actually a strong suit, is empathy and relating to grief and loss. But yeah, I mean,
I would say that anybody who would criticize you for liking Joe Biden a little bit more because he reminds you of your pop, they can kind of just go fuck themselves. Because
Yeah.
in the grand scheme of things, all of anyone's opinions, any person's opinions, are informed by those around them. So if you think your pop was a good person, and by all means, whenever you talk about him, he sounds like he was a blast and a wonderful dude.
yeah,
Um, like that means you feel he's going to be a good choice and he's going to be a good person. Like, if someone looked at me and was like, Trump reminds me of my grandpa, I'd be like, is your grandpa dead? I hope he's dead because I don't want to meet that man. Like,
Yeah.
please, God, keep him away from me.
yeah. But
Well,
no, I appreciate that.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, back to the thing. I mean, it's just, I guess I have to concede that, like, I mean, it's great that he was a war hero, he was a Vietnam veteran, but yeah, when you bring up the point, Donnie, that there was just some other things he was missing, I guess, yeah, I mean, it looks like that's how it played out.
Yeah.
So,
But let's go ahead and lighten the mood a little bit with another cultural topic that happened in 2004. Let's talk about a silly one that happened. Super Bowl 38 halftime show. Yeah, that halftime show.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
The halftime show with Justin Timberlake and Janet Jackson. When
So I don't
when
really know what your opinions on sports are. I mean, I'm guessing neither of you are really sports people?
I am not at all.
Okay.
not really.
But
Okay, so were either of you watching the Super Bowl when this
I
happened?
was not. I heard about it at school the next morning.
Same. Like, and I was watching the majority of it, but I just happened to go to the bathroom in classic Blake fashion.
Oh my God.
I just happened to go to the bathroom when this happened.
Now, like,
So
for those of you who don't know, the Super Bowl 38 halftime show, what happened was Justin Timberlake was performing with Janet Jackson, and at the end of the song, he ripped part of her top off and revealed a boob on live TV.
With a weird ring on it.
Yeah, and it caused a moral panic in this country. This incident, like I'm gonna kind of connect them a little bit here, but like you were talking about how George Bush, like, how could he have won despite how much of a fucking fumble he was? This incident was part of the reason why George Bush won re-election, excuse me. Hear me out. Because when this happened, it caused basically George Bush, because I remember George Bush and Barbara Bush going on TV and like talking about like this incident and how it's like a good representation of the decline of moral decency in this country at the time and blah, 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 and that's why you need to vote for us. He basically used this to deflect from his shit in Iraq.
I don't remember them having an opinion on this at all.
Oh yeah, it was like one of their big talking points for a while, and it just gave him an opportunity to deflect from his fuck ups and basically incite moral panic of like, you know, you need to vote for us so you know we can keep America squeaky clean.
Yeah.
Getting the Christian conservative values out there.
Yeah.
I can say, like, in hindsight, though, my biggest opinion of this only, like, for the longest time, like, who gave a shit? But, like, in hindsight, looking back on it, like, what, like, 16 years later?
Yeah.
Just the absolute, honestly, the absolute racism and sexism that went into this moment in the aftermath. Because, like, I think Janet Jackson got all the shit for this.
Yeah.
And not Justin Timberlake, like the white dude, like the guy,
the white dude,
you know,
who exposed her boob.
Right.
And it's just like he continued to only become a bigger and bigger celebrity after this, and her career basically just kind of, wouldn't you say, just kind of like either plateaued or just kind of petered out, I guess, in a way.
Definitely plateaued.
Yeah.
And it's just like we, you know. He got to go on to get more gigs, and he was at the Super Bowl like 2 or 3 years ago. Like he got to go back.
Yeah.
He was invited back, but she was never invited back. And just like, what bullshit is that? I just I don't want to talk in circles here, so I'm going to just go ahead and leave it at that. But, yeah.
I think I wasn't watching when this happened either. I was at a Super Bowl party, but me and my friend didn't give a shit about football, so we were doing anything else but that. And then that happened, and we were both kind of like, well, we missed the exciting part of the night, I guess. Like not in a pervy teen way, but just in a like everyone's gonna be talking about this way.
Yeah.
In my later years, of course, like someone brought it back. I was like, oh yeah, I don't think I've ever seen that picture before, and I looked it up, and I was like, that was planned. that had to be planned because it's just the cup comes off and she's wearing like a sun-shaped nipple ring and not like a piercing ring but like a finger ring.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like it was such a weird like what they make those?
Yeah.
Like it wasn't even a thing of like, oh man, boobs. It was literally just like, this whole situation is weird and I'm a little uncomfortable now. Like I feel like if I would have been watching, I would have been very uncomfortable in a room full of adults who were all, you know, kind of Christian value adults. Would have freaked the fuck out.
Yeah.
Which would have been funny in hindsight, and I kind of am a little regretful. But you know, it's just another weird thing where it's like, I don't understand this country sometimes where it's like, why are we so uncomfortable with nudity? Like, I understand, you know, you can't just have naked people running around all over the place. That's a little weird. But the reaction that we had to it was such like so over the top. Like, you ain't never seen a boob before? There's statues in Europe that have boobs on them. There's statues in our museum that have exposed boobs on them.
Yeah.
You're gonna get mad about that? Gonna get mad about boobs and David's penis? Like, come on. It's just a statue. Like, we all have them. Who cares?
Right.
Did anyone, and I actually do want to come back to the point that you just made, Jake, but did anyone ever buy into the whole wardrobe malfunction excuse?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I never talked to anyone about it like that. Like, most of the people I would talk to didn't, but like adults at the time, I wasn't like, do you believe it was a wardrobe malfunction? I think specifically the big tell for that, which I remember I actually did talk about this with my mom at one point. She said, oh no, it was definitely planned because the last line in that song is, I'm gonna have you naked by the end of this song, and then it happened.
Yeah.
Like, it's like,
could you be any more obvious?
Man. Oh yeah. God, that's ridiculous.
But we have so many people that, and I mean, I've witnessed it firsthand. So many people will bring their younger kids to a war movie where people are getting like blown to bits by machine guns.
Yeah.
But like, if there's like a topless woman, like they freak out.
Ruined for life.
Yeah, and it's just like, it's so weird.
And it's specifically, it does seem to be very sexist with it too, because I remember like, I mean, it's a little different now, but this was like 4, 5, 6 years ago. There was a basketball player who dove for a ball, and as he dove for the ball, he slid across the ground, and his shorts came down to his knees, and you could see everything.
Yeah. And
he just real quick pulled him back up, and it was something that like, it trended on Twitter for like half a day and then disappeared and nobody cared about it. But it's like whenever, it's same with celebrity nudes. Like if a female celebrity has nudes leaked, everyone's going crazy about it.
Yeah.
But then we have like a couple of weeks ago, Chris Evans accidentally shows his penis on Twitter or whatever, and everyone's like, "Oh no, let's be super supportive."
Yeah.
It's like, but it's a double standard. At the same time, I did see like some women posting some stuff that I was like, this is making me uncomfortable with how like aggressive you're being about this whole situation of seeing a dude's dick. Like, I don't know how many women out there are like this, but that's the kind of thing where I'm like, no, I've never seen a woman be excited to see a dick before. Like, not in like the way that they were, where it's like, you're just seeing a picture of this dick. Like, it's not a real dick that's here and ready. Like, that's a different story. But you're seeing a picture of a dick that you're never going to get close to, and you're, like, going apeshit over it. It's like, I don't understand that. I mean, same on the other side of the spectrum with men like that. But with men at this point, I feel more it's an embarrassment because I am a man. He says after his comments about Miss Incredible.
Well, let's move on to fun subjects again.
Yay.
Move on to TV shows that started in 2004. I'm just going to run through them here since we're running a little long. and we'll talk about them as a whole. We got Drake and Josh, which was just it was Keenan and Kel for white people in a way.
Oh my God, you're so right.
But it was a very funny and clever show. I just loved the character of Josh in that show. It's spherical.
Spherical.
And Josh's love of Oprah just like still tickles me to this day.
It was able to pull up being LOL random in a good way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Danny Phantom started in 2004. That was just a badass fucking cartoon.
Oh yeah.
That was like one of my favorite cartoons at the time. Another cartoon that started at this year, Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends on Cartoon Network. That was a show I felt was a little underrated, at least at first. Mm-hmm. It had some great moments and a great cast of characters, especially Blue. That first episode where they're trying to find a birthday present for Mrs. Foster, and he's just kicking everybody in the shins and calling them rip-off artists. When I was 13, that was the funniest fucking thing ever to me. Another cartoon started in 2004 was The Batman, which I think is a very underrated cartoon.
Yeah.
I mean, like, especially with what it did with, like, it took a very unique take on, like, all of Batman's villains. Like, the Riddler looks like fucking Marilyn Manson in that show.
But it works.
Yeah.
I think.
And the Joker is just, like, he looks like a crazy, like, I guess homeless man, but, like, he can also, like, fight toe-to-toe, hand-to-hand with Batman on an equal level, and it's just so cool. Yeah, it's just a very underrated cartoon.
They had a cool, I don't know if character-wise, I mean, I don't know if you'll ever be able to top, like, the animated series Mr. Freeze, but as far as, like, design, like, their Mr. Freeze looked cool, I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's underrated.
Another show, Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide. That was just, like, such a relatable show, especially when you were our age at that time. Yeah. Just a fun show, just a clever show. And then another show that started in 2004 is House, which that was a guilty pleasure of me. I watched that show from beginning to end and fucking loved it, and I'm just a huge Hugh Laurie fan as well. Uh-huh. So what do you guys got to say about any of these shows? Jake?
Drake and Josh was one of my favorite Nick shows. Probably one of my top live action ones as well.
Yeah.
And Ned's is up there. I don't think it quite breaks my like top 5 for it. It was good. There was some advice that I could see being helpful in like a larger school.
Yeah.
Some stuff was kind of useless, like, do your locker combination, put your first 2 numbers in, so then you can just do the third and get your books. It's like, why not just carry extra books? We could just do that. That'd be a little easy, like,
Oh man, Jake's living in 3004.
Oh yeah, totally. I'm up there with Childish Gambino. Danny Phantom was excellent. I felt like as it got into later seasons, it kind of started to get a little choppy here and there with the story. But it's been a while since I've watched it, so I could be wrong. Foster's was definitely underrated, but I say that as someone who didn't watch a ton of Foster's. I caught it. I think I started watching Foster's occasionally after it had been canceled, and was slowly going out of rotation on Cartoon Network. Other than that, I skipped the Batman. I was never a huge fan of Batman cartoons. I don't know why. Animated series is great, and the Mask of the Phantasm is wonderful. But most of the cartoons, I've just kind of been like, I liked Spider-Man too much, and that cartoon can't be beat. Other than that, House was a show that my parents loved, and I knew a lot of people who loved it. I would watch episodes here and there. When it came to a streaming service, I started watching it, and it got to an episode with babies that like just born babies that were having issues, and it freaked me the fuck out, and I couldn't watch it ever again because it just made me squeamish, which is weird because I've been watching The Boys recently, and I'm just fine with that, and I can handle violence in most things. But I think it's because House was a bit more realistic,
right?
That it freaked me out a bit more.
Yeah.
Blake?
I have not seen a single episode of House. I am rather squeamish, and I get freaked out by stuff, so I'll probably never try. I don't know, but Yeah, I just feel like there's some stuff that happens with testicles in it that is like, yeah, I'm good. And then Danny Phantom was always a show that I wish I had actually sat down and watched, but I never did. I only would catch bits of it, and I remember thinking every time like, oh, this actually seems like a really cool show,
Mm-hmm.
and I just never got around to actually like, watching it, regularly. And I always regretted that. If it's on anything now, maybe I'll give it a try here or there.
I definitely recommend it.
Yeah.
It's really good. And fun fact, oh God, Hellboy is the principal in that show.
That's awesome.
Huh.
Ron Perlman. Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
and then with Foster's Home, kind of sort of the same thing as Danny Phantom, except maybe a little bit more. I think I saw a little bit more of Foster's. I remember seeing like the first like 2 or 3 episodes, and
Mhm.
I was like, this actually seems like a really nice premise.
Yeah.
It seems like a very pleasant show, actually. Like, I'm sure it has its like outrageous goofball gags in it, but yeah, it just seems like it could be very wholesome, and I kind of regret missing out on that as a whole too. And then Drake and Josh is just great.
Yeah.
I just the theater thug.
No. See, my name is Antoine.
Whoa, take it easy, guy, man.
Oh God, that episode.
And then yeah, it's just Josh Peck also like. Josh Peck has to be one of like the most legendary glow ups ever.
Yeah, he's right there next to Neville Longbottom.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like Josh like lost all that weight, and it's just like good for him, like
Yeah.
good for him.
Oh yeah.
But he is the anti-supersize me. It was a good pick of shows you got there.
Well, then let's move on to shows that ended in 2004. Friends. I've maybe seen like 1 or 2 episodes of Friends, but I remember when this show ended, it was, a huge deal. Pretty much everybody at that time watched Friends except for me. Another show that ended in 2004 was Frasier. Never really watched Frasier either, but I know, Blake, you're a fan of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I love Kelsey Grammer as Sideshow Bob in The Simpsons.
I love how they have David Hyde Pierce's Sideshow Bob's brother.
Yeah, Cecil.
That's great. That's great.
Static Shock ended in 2004, which was a great cartoon as well. And that was also just like a very like different kind of cartoon from what DC usually put out. And then some more shows that ended in 2004. Hey Arnold, Rugrats, and Johnny Bravo. I kind of grouped these 3 together because I mentioned in the last episode when Dexter's Lab ended, that was the first time I really felt like, wow, I'm starting to grow up. These 3 shows did that like times 20 to me. Having those 3 shows that I watched like religiously as a kid just like disappear like that, like that was the moment where I was like, oh wow, childhood's over, I guess.
You just said Rugrats, Hey Arnold. What was the third one?
Johnny Bravo.
All 3 of those ended the same year?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fucking wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like heavy.
And I mean, Hey Arnold was like a show that I like only came to appreciate more as I got older and looked back on it.
Yeah.
Very, very slice of life, which is great.
Yeah.
I mean, Rugrats is just a classic show, and apparently they're bringing it back, which could be good, could be bad.
Yeah.
And Johnny Bravo, I will always regret that we never got that live-action Johnny Bravo movie with The Rock. Like, if I ever win like the lottery or just come into like a shit ton of money, I will spend it all to personally fund that movie. What do you guys got to say, starting with Blake?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's just like you said, like Johnny Bravo, Rugrats, and Hey Arnold, like ending the same year, like that's amazing. Though I will say though, I'm kind of surprised those movies, those shows. I would have, if I had to guess, I would have felt like those shows ended sooner than that.
Especially Johnny Bravo.
Especially Johnny. I mean, I'm sorry. Like I'm trying to picture Johnny Bravo existing after the year 1999, and like it's not playing out in my brain. And then Rugrats, like Oh man, I mean, Rugrats was like everybody's favorite show at one time. I feel like I
Yeah.
don't know,
Until
maybe
SpongeBob showed up on the scene.
yeah, SpongeBob totally stole its thunder, but like Rugrats was just had such great imagination. And then Hey Arnold, like honestly, like of all the Nicktoons, Hey Arnold is probably the greatest of them all. Like Rugrats is a classic and it's great, but like Hey Arnold has a special wisdom to that show.
Yeah.
And it's almost like it's very underrated still. I feel like because I feel like even after all these years, like you'll see like a T-shirt. If you see Hey Arnold on a T-shirt now, like from Hot Topic or whatever, he's with all the other Nicktoons. Like he doesn't get his own T-shirt. And I know that's not like a perfect gauge there, but I feel like Hey Arnold should be mentioned more than it ever was.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, Donnie. I started with those three shows. What were the other shows you mentioned?
Static
Friends.
Shock, Frasier, and Friends.
Yeah, Static Shock. I'm surprised they never tried to make Static Shock more mainstream DC.
Yeah.
He just, I don't know. It's just they kind of never just did anything more with that character, and like, I think he's a cool character. And like, shout out to the episode where like his one friend's father doesn't want her to hang out with him because he's a racist.
Yeah.
That was heavy. Like,
Yeah.
Props to them. And I mean, Frasier is like probably my personal favorite sitcom. I just have so many great memories watching entire hours, an entire season in one day with my pop. That was our show. That was our show, and it's so dry, so clever, it's so witty. Like it was. I don't know what happened to that writers team, that writers room, but they need to be reassembled. Like they need to come back and team up again because like that was just one of the smartest sitcoms I've ever seen. And then Friends is absolutely the most overrated show I have ever witnessed. It's just I've probably seen like a season's worth of episodes across the entire series, and like it's not that funny. Like I straight face through it. It has a few good jokes here and there, but there's bound to be an okay one sooner or later. But I have never seen something so mediocre be so rewarded and beloved. Since I don't even have a clever joke here, but neither did Friends half the time. So
roasted.
But yeah, you go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, Friends is totally just overrated garbage in my opinion. I'm both shocked and mildly appalled at the fact that my nephew has watched every season of Friends and likes it. Jesus. And he is 13. I'm like amazed that he can relate to it in any way, being that age.
Yeah.
When I couldn't relate to it at that age.
Yeah.
Frasier, I didn't watch any of. I wasn't a big sitcom guy. Like I think the only two sitcoms I really watched were Fresh Prince and The Drew Carey Show, which now that I've watched The Drew Carey Show and it's one of my favorite sitcoms, you can probably understand why I'm a bit of a pervert. I mean, it's a pretty dirty show for cable TV.
It is.
Anyway, Static Shock, same thing as the Batman. I had Spider-Man and I was like, nothing beats Spider-Man. I'm going to go out of order for these last one of how we said it. I have the list in front of me, so I've been reading off of that to keep track. Johnny Bravo, I used to love as a kid, and I hardly remember anything about it. And I really want to watch it again just to see how iffy it is. Because I remember it being kind of like a funny, sexist show, I guess. I'm not really sure.
That show could not exist in the era of Me Too and Time's Up.
I disagree with that because the whole point of the show is that Johnny Bravo gets his comeuppance every time.
Yeah, I remember it being like.
And he's not really sexist. He's just really in love with himself.
Yeah, he's in love with himself, and he thinks women should be in love with him, but they all just fucking hate him.
Yeah.
But anyway, Rugrats, I was actually kind of surprised in the opposite way of Blake, where I was like, Rugrats ended in 2004? I thought it had a couple more years after that. But I guess that the all grown up stuff did happen in like 2000, like what, 2?
Yeah, something like that.
And that was that had episodes. Most of its episodes were hit or miss. With that. So by that time, it was like, yeah, it's time to put Rugrats out of its misery.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds bad. Considering it's about babies. I could have gone way worse with that joke, but I won't. Rugrats, as we said, was everybody's favorite until SpongeBob showed up on the scene. I am, however, one of the people who Hey Arnold is my second favorite Nicktoon because Invader Zim takes the cake for me. Because I'm a weird, crazy person. But Hey Arnold has all the heart and just joy that you could want from a cartoon, while staying grounded and real in most cases, but also having heavy-hitting important episodes like the Pigeon Dude one and the Stoop Kid episode. And that hour-long season finale, like, I still haven't seen the movie. It's something I need to rewatch the whole series and then watch the movie. But that hour-long episode, I remember it being just so, like, heart-wrenching at parts. Also, that episode has one of my favorite Hey Arnold jokes of all time. They say, I'm like, oh, we'll continue the story in a minute. Let's go get some food. And so it goes to commercial break. And when they come back, they're finishing a thing of Chinese. And Grandpa opens up a fortune cookie. And he says, hot dog is my lucky day. And his lucky numbers are 13, 13, 6, 6, 6.
Yeah.
And it was like 2 years later, I saw that and I was like, that's amazing that they slipped that in there. And I laughed my ass off at like 13 or 14 when I realized that.
Yeah.
So yeah, Hey Arnold is certainly one that would be missed. And if everyone I talk to who has seen the movie says it's the perfect ending for the whole series. And it wraps everything up in a nice little bow.
Are you talking about like the TV movie that recently came out?
The Jungle movie.
Okay. Because
I forgot that there was that movie because that movie is awful.
Yeah, it's not that good. It's
really not. It's such a weird. It's like it has the plot of like, oh, this big dude is going to come into the city and make the whole city a shopping mall. It's the same plot from the Rocket Power video game that came out years later, and that game was also awful and trashy. Because it's, a lot of those games were like that back then. And
How high can your hopes and standards be for a Rocket Power game?
Pretty high. In the age of Tony Hawk, like pretty high, I would say. But I'm also one of these rare kids who likes Rocket Power. And when anyone's like, oh, Rocket Power was like one of the worst Nicktoons, I'm like, what is wrong with you? Why don't you like Rocket Power? But I was also a skater kid, so.
Rocket Power was good, but it's also like, if you watch it now, it is so fucking dated. It has not aged well at all.
Honestly, I saw a meme once that I was like, that makes the most sense. It was all the kids who liked Rocket Power back in the day are all huge stoners now. And I was like, yeah, that makes perfect sense.
But then like if it's not like the summer of '99 and your favorite restaurant is at Hard Rock Cafe, like that show is stuck in a very particular period.
Yeah.
If I could just add something about Frasier,
No.
Oh, okay. Well, good night.
Go ahead.
I just want to recommend an episode. Like, if you have no interest in the series itself, whatever. But I do ask that you give one episode a chance. And if you're not into this episode, then don't bother with the rest of it. But at least watch 3 Days at the Condo. I forget what season, what episode, but I gave you the title. That's good enough. But it is one of the best episodes of any show I've ever seen, and it is the best episode of any sitcom I've ever seen. It has, and I would love to say that it would take too long to repeat the entire joke, but it has one of the best, if not the best, build-ups to a giant misunderstanding that I've ever seen on television. Like, it's hilarious. So yeah, Frasier, 3 Days at the Condo. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you think of like the characters or the rest of the series. Just give that episode a chance.
All right. Let's move on. The video games that came out in 2004. I'll just run through them again here. We'll talk about them as a whole. Sly 2. I mentioned in the previous episode how much I loved the Sly Cooper series, how it's basically like a playable Saturday morning cartoon. In my opinion, Sly 2 is the best one. I have played that game so many fucking times I've lost count. Star Wars Battlefront came out this year, which was a fantastic game, and it's still a beloved game to this day. As long as you're not talking about the recent installments, anyway. Yeah.
Oof.
Tony Hawk's Underground 2 came out this year, and you know what? That was like definitely the peak of the Tony Hawk skateboarding craze. I mean, after this, it only went downhill from here. This was when that scene started to slowly die. And I remember at this time, middle and high school, anytime there was a get-together with my buddies, there was one of two games that was being played for a multiplayer day, and it was either Star Wars Battlefront or Tony Hawk's Underground 2. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas came out this year. I mentioned before how Grand Theft Auto 3 and Vice City kind of like created like the image and aesthetic of Grand Theft Auto as we currently know it. This was the game that solidified it.
Yeah.
Halo 2 came out this year, which was the game that like absolutely kickstarted and launched the Halo craze. Knights of the Old Republic 2 came out this year. I mentioned before how the previous year everybody ate up Knights of the Old Republic 1. Knights of the Old Republic 2 was even bigger. I mean, I still have that cover art with Darth Nihilus burned into my mind to this day. Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories came out this year, which is the black sheep of the Kingdom Hearts franchise. But honestly, I enjoy it. I think it's an underrated game, and I think it's a fun game. And also the Nintendo DS and the PSP launched this year, which was a big deal because, I mean, no serious competitor had really tried to compete with Nintendo's handheld market before. I mean, Sony definitely showed Nintendo that they couldn't keep, a monopoly on the video game market when they came out with the PlayStation a few years prior. So coming out with the PSP saying, hey, we're going to challenge you on the handheld side of things too, that was a ballsy move. How well it was, I guess it depends on who you ask. Personally, I always liked the PSP. I think the problem with the PSP was all of its best games came out at the very end of its life. But what do you got to say about this, Jake?
Okay, so I'll start with the Nintendo DS and the PSP. This was a good time for Sony to try and challenge Nintendo on handheld consoles. Unfortunately, Nintendo has this way of just taking a simple idea, almost like having two screens, and just making it work in a flawless manner. Mostly with their own titles, third-party titles are always kind of iffy. Nintendo DS is amazing. 3DS improves on it in every way, and I will say I was very depressed this past week when Nintendo finally announced that yes, they are discontinuing the 3DS in favor of the Switch. Kind of sucks, but I saw it going this way since the Switch is a handheld anyway.
Right.
I have a lot of friends who really do like the PSP. Most of the people I know who like it for sports games, but I did have a friend who liked it for the handheld Battlefront game, the handheld Star Wars Battlefront game.
Yeah.
Because it actually had Planet 2 outer space combat. So you could hop in a fighter, fly into space, and fight in space.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that got buried into the PSP. As for competing handhelds, I think the only other one was like the Sega Game Gear, but it had a tiny, terrible screen, and it took like 8 AAA batteries for 3
had like
hours.
4. Yeah, it had like no battery life at all.
It was terrible. So kind of goes by the wayside there. As for I'll jump to Sly now. Sly 2, I never really had a PlayStation growing up. My dad had gotten a PlayStation for himself at one point to play like NASCAR and golf games. And the only game I ever had for the PlayStation was Kingdom Hearts 2. So I unfortunately missed a lot of what I assume are very good PlayStation games. Sly Cooper, I think Jak and Daxter and Sly Cooper were the two that always intrigued me the most, but Sly was always out in front because it looked like Splinter Cell, only fun.
Yeah.
Like Splinter Cell could be like a boring slog sometimes, and this looked amazing. And I think you guys had talked about the first one in the podcast, and do they have a remastered edition for PS4?
Donnie would know that answer more than I wouldn't.
Yeah, they do.
Oh, cool. Right on. I'll have to pick that up sometime then and check it out. Because I've always wanted to play those games and they look really fun. KOTOR, I was never a fan of either Knights of the Old Republic games.
Really?
That specific type of RPG was not my style, and it can't hold my attention. Well, it can. Once you get to like Dantooine, the game ramps up in difficulty so far that I got annoyed with it after that. For GTA San Andreas, I, like the rest of you, my first GTA game was Simpsons Hit and Run. So I didn't have a lot of experience with this, and the only other GTA games I've played is I played a bit of 4, and I played through all of 5, and I absolutely love 5, which is set in the same city as San Andreas. And I imagine San Andreas is probably fun, but like I can't imagine trying to play it now. It'd be a challenge.
That's
older
fair.
Games like that. Halo 2. As a kid, I have fond memories of this game. I used to play it with one of my friends a lot, my friend Casey, who I'd go over to his house and we would just screw around in the game a bunch. I remember spending hours of time to get the Scarab gun in the second level, I think it is, and it's such an arduous process where like you have to break the wings off a Banshee. You have to hijack it in a tunnel past a certain spot so it doesn't rubber band you out of the tunnel. Then you have to have it follow you the whole way down to the tunnel till the very end. Then jump in it as you're going through a loading screen, so you glitch it through part of the level and fly it up to like a building in the background to get the gun from the actual Scarab in the game, because they have to load an asset for it to actually show it firing. It took so long, but it was so worth it, because it just felt like we felt like accomplished gamers at that point in time, which is a dumb thing to say, but it's wonderful. Looking back on it, I recently bought the Master Chief Collection for PC, played through Halo 1, absolutely loved it. Played through most of Halo 2, and remembered why I like Halo 3 more, because the guns in Halo 2 are awful. Like, they swap out the assault rifle for the 3-burst battle rifle, and it's just garbage. Like, it barely hits anyone. And then you have the SMGs, which have the worst recoil. They have worse recoil than a machine gun turret.
Yeah.
Like, and it makes no sense. And 3 comes along and improves everything. On top of that, those Arbiter levels are just boring and ugly. Better now with the remastered graphics, but oh god, back then they looked so terrible. I guess that brings me to Star Wars Battlefront. Awesome game. Mm-hmm. That was a game I loved to play by myself or with my brother a lot of the time. 2 improves on it in every way while keeping the same core gameplay. And then we get on to the later ones, which we won't talk about because EA. Why EA? Why?
Yeah.
And then we got Tony Hawk's Underground 2. This is a game that it's not my favorite Tony Hawk. I prefer the first Underground over this one. I feel like this one got a little too cartoony at times, but it made sense since the storyline was Team Bam Margera versus Team Tony Hawk.
Yeah.
In a worldwide spectacle to compete for ridiculous bullshit.
Right.
It was definitely at the top of like Viva La Bam time, which, oh my god, I kind of miss that show at times. I would love to go back and watch all of it again.
That's actually what Michael's been doing right now, and he loves it.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I can only imagine like how great it is. But I have very distinct good memories of this game because my cousin Maria had this game for GameCube, and it was one of the
Maria.
Oh yeah, she's just a wonderful lady. But we would sit in her bedroom and we would play nothing but that all day when it came out, and we did it for like a good while. A lot of the times, like the only other game I have a strong memory like that specifically with her is the first Paper Mario. And that is one of my all-time favorite games because it's so fun. It's easy to pick up and like jump in and trade off with each other. And with Tony Hawk, it's like we both loved Viva La Bam. We both thought it was the most amazing stupid show on the face of the planet. And it's just everything about Tony Hawk's Underground 2. If that ever gets remastered, I will be all over it, just like I was with the first 2 that just came out.
Yeah.
Even though I'm awful at those 2. Yeah, I hope they do get a remaster because I will be all over that, and I will be very tempted to just take my whole PC to Maria's house and be like, "We're playing Underground. Hit your controller and plug it into my machine."
Blake?
Oh, okay. Yes.
All right, stopped.
Bob was listening. Yeah, Jake, I'm so glad that like this whole time I kept thinking about it in my head that it was just me. I'm so glad that somebody else was like the guns in Halo 2 kind of suck.
I actually talked with my brother about it. I visited him recently and talked about Halo 2 and how awful the guns are in it.
That 3-burst scope assault rifle. It's like, either give me a sniper rifle and give me a separate assault rifle, or like don't give me like a combination of the two. Like that's dumb.
You don't need a burst rifle with a 2x scope. I have the pistol that had a 2x scope that they took out in this game.
Oh yeah.
The pistol was so OP in the first one. It was like you could headshot anything and just decimate with the pistol.
You could almost beat the game with just the pistol in the first
For
one.
real.
But anyway, yeah, that is one of the greatest sins of Halo, is taking out the pistol with the scope in the first game, because then the pistol in Halo 2 is like, oh my God, you may as well just like throw a toothbrush at them. Like, fuck that.
You just gotta learn accuracy then. Like you gotta do it from far away and hope for the best.
But it's like, and then when you would use it, like the only reason people thought the SMG was cool in Halo 2 was that you could dual wield it. Like that was the first time you could dual wield in Halo.
And that is the one thing about Halo 2 that made up for all the garbage guns, was dual wielding.
Yeah.
Because then, like, my brother had said he would literally go with like a full needler and a pistol, and then load a full needler clip into him, and then one shot with the pistol would kill him.
Yeah.
Just simple things like that, or just doing like quick rhythm-based taps to be like brap 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 with an SMG and a pistol. Like,
yeah,
it's all strategy at that point, though, and nobody wants strategy in Halo.
But it's like, but then the recoil in using the SMGs, like, it's like throwing a lawnmower into a blender. Like it's just so like. But yeah, like guns were garbage. But no, that was when like the Halo hype really started to like blast off. I mean, I'm having a flashback to Kogel just all the time. He was just like, the demons.
I always did the grunt voice. The demon is here.
Yeah, and yeah, guns are terrible. Like that scope assault rifle, terrible. Either give me a sniper or give me an assault. Don't try to blend the two. And then Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. Like, I remember the first time I knew this game was going to be a thing was it was like the most edgelord middle schooler thing ever. I had snuck downstairs to watch an episode of South Park, and it had gone to commercials, and Comedy Central was showing all their shows. And then all of a sudden, I see this helicopter, and it's doing "Welcome to the Jungle" by Guns N' Roses.
I remember that.
Which was the theme song for the game. And I was like, what? And it's just showing all of this like free roaming and stuff. And I'm like, this is gonna be the best game ever. And like it was ahead of its time. Like it is like I won't say that as a way of saying it's like ageless. Like Jake, if you were to try to play it now, you'd be like, woof. It shows its wrinkles. But you know what? Like, whatever. It's a masterpiece for its time. And it was just like it was so controversial. It pissed people off. Like that's what Rockstar's all about, just pissing people off and having a controversial video game. Sly never got around to those. I wouldn't be against someone bringing them over in the future. Like I'd love to try them out. Wait, or did I? Am I kind of forgetting? Did you try to get me to play one of those one time, Donnie?
Yeah, I think I got you to play the first one for like an evening.
Okay. Well, we gotta do that again. And then Tony Hawk Underground, like T-Bam, like, oh jeez, just like the cutscenes. I remember YouTubing the cutscenes that you had like a kid in a wheelchair that was always screaming and yelling and just like,
Ollie?
Yeah. It's like this game just doesn't give a shit.
I do want to ask one question about Underground 2.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember what Bam Margera's first line in that game is?
Oh, shit. I forget.
So it's all the group of skaters to choose teams sitting in this black room after they've been kidnapped, basically. Bam comes out with the chainsaw, starts like swinging it around, and the one Eric dude from the first game pisses his pants scared. And then Bam takes off the hockey mask covering face and looks over and goes, "Hello, butt nuggets."
Yeah.
And that's the first thing he says in the game, and you're like, "Yep, it's Bam."
Yeah, it's him. And then the PSP, I was just a Nintendo fanboy at the time, but I'm like, the PlayStation tried to have their own Game Boy. That's so stupid. And
Trying to call the cats in. Piss, piss, piss.
and it's like I don't want to have a cartridge of Starsky and Hutch to watch a movie. But yeah, it's just like, whew. Yeah, I mean, it's like, at least the PSP lasted a while. Like the Vita, I remember I never heard of that ever again after launch.
And like the sad thing is, the Vita by itself, the Vita is a fantastic system. It's literally a pocket PS4.
Yeah.
It just didn't have any games to carry it.
Yeah. But I will say though, like, Nintendo does have the right idea now, where it's like, if you're going to have a handheld system, just make it so that the main console is able to go on the go.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I thought of that like 10, 15 years ago. Basically, they owe me billions of dollars. But anyway, like, no, they have the right idea. It's like, don't just have two separate systems. Just make it so you're able to have the main console be handheld. And then the DS, like, yeah, I think like after like the Game Boy Advance, I just stopped bothering with handheld systems in general. But yeah, no, it's a good list. You did a good job, Donnie.
Well, thank you. Let's move on to the last subject of the evening, music. I'm going to go ahead and read through the whole list here. We got 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge by My Chemical Romance, Hot Fuzz by The Killers, Yeah by Usher, Over and Over by Nelly, Just Lose It by Eminem, Let Me Love You by Mario, Somewhere Only We Know by Keen, I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
You are, yeah.
Okay, Accidentally in Love by The Counting Crows, Unwritten by Natasha Bedingfield, Funeral by Arcade Fire, The College Dropout by Kanye West, and Chronicles of Life and Death by Good Charlotte. And on that note, I'm going to leave it to you guys because I literally have nothing to say about any of this because I did not listen to any of this.
And I just want to say I did the list for music this episode. Some of those are, if anyone's listening and being like, wait a second, you're being uneven there. Some of those were a specific song and artist, and then others I'm like, well, I just may as well say the album that came out that year because the whole album was popular. No, I'm not going to beat around the bush. Jake, go ahead and fanboy here.
Cool. Well, I'll leave the fanboy for the last because I only have like a few of these to talk about. Most of them are stuff that I'm like not super into. Accidentally in Love, like I said earlier in the podcast hours ago, it's better than All Stars by Smash Mouth. So Shrek 2's got that going for it. Just Lose It by Eminem. That's one of the only Eminem songs that I really kind of like. I'm not a huge Eminem fan. Never really have been, but that was the one song that like started getting me more into rap, along with the Gorillaz, that kind of put me into more of a rap spectrum for a few things here and there. Yeah by Usher is one of these songs that it's going to be in my brain forever.
Yeah.
I still sometimes look at people when I'm leaving like work or like when I'm leaving my brother's place. I'll look at them and go, peace up, A-Town down, make my way out of the building. And most people get it. Some people look at me like I'm an idiot, but that's fine. And now we are at the big one, which I will try to make quick as possible, but I don't know how that's going to work. 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge by My Chemical Romance is, in my opinion, their absolute best album that they have ever made. At the time when it was coming out, I wasn't into a lot of music. I had gotten the first Gorillaz album and I absolutely loved it. Now it's a little dated, not the best. The later albums are a lot better, I feel. But that's besides the point. I pretty much listened to them, and I listened to a lot of the Misfits from my brother turning me on to that. So then, 12 years old, met a girl who became my first girlfriend, who was really into a lot of the like emo alternative type music. And I remember her having the actual shirt of the album cover.
Yeah.
On top of that, I feel like I vaguely remember that they had commercials for this album, like after their first two videos came out,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't think I know of any other album other than like, the like compilation 90s and rock albums that would come out that had commercials for them. So there was a lot of like exposure to it, and I was like, okay, I'll get it. And they quickly became my favorite band, and they have stayed my favorite band for a very long time. They get some competition here and there, but they've always kept that top spot. And I know a lot of people would probably disagree with me on this being their best album, because a lot of people love Black Parade. But personally, I feel like Black Parade's a bit overrated, in a way. It's the best comparison I could think of is that Three Cheers for Sweet Revenge is to Black Parade what Dookie by Green Day is to American Idiot. Like, they're both good albums. Dookie is more of like what their sound was meant to be or meant to feel like, whereas American Idiot or Black Parade feels more like they knew what their sound needs to be. They knew what they can do good, so they just need to get it to more people and make themselves more popular, so they have more fans. So it almost feels like Black Parade is kind of like a sanitized version of Three Cheers for Sweet Revenge, where it's a little more simpler and it's a little more for everyone, whereas Three Cheers for Sweet Revenge just felt like it spoke to me on such a level where I felt like a lot of the times, since I didn't have like a ton of friends and I was kind of a weirdo kid, um, it felt like I was an outcast, but that was okay. Whereas once Black Parade came out, and I loved it and ate up every second of it and absolutely loved it, but more people started to get more into that. And now as an adult, when I talk to people, they only want to talk about Black Parade. They never want to talk about Three Cheers for Sweet Revenge. Most of the ones who want to talk about just Black Parade won't even bother talking about Killjoys, which I think is very underrated. I'm one of the few people who's like, that album is just perfect for what they were going for. And nobody ever talks about the first album because it was their first album and it was like recorded in a studio in New Jersey somewhere that nobody knows about. So it's an interesting evolution of the band where the first album, like, you can feel where they're coming from, and there's a couple of songs that are like, this could be on Three Cheers from Sweet Revenge. Three Cheers is like perfect for what they would become and what they want to be. Black Parade then takes that sound and makes it better for the masses, and then Killjoys takes a huge left turn and does some different things, tries some different things, goes for an interesting story, and a lot of people didn't like it because it was so different.
Yeah. I was so shocked that was all the albums they had. Like, they didn't have more than that. Like, I was so shocked about that in hindsight.
Well, it's even funnier because most of my favorite My Chemical Romance songs aren't even on albums. They're like B-sides and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or stuff from, like, they did that stretch of 5 EPs before they went on hiatus or stopped being a band for a while. And like there are some songs in that are just awesome. Like Boy Division is one of my all-time favorite songs on that because it starts out so strong and it just rips through the whole song super fast. It's like trying to think of what, I don't know, a good song to compare it to, but it starts off really fast with like this kind of violent lyrics of like what is it? If all my enemies threw a party, would you light the candles? Would you drink the wine and watch television? And it just goes from there into this like ridiculous chorus about like, if my enemies are coming to kill me, are you just gonna do nothing?
Yeah.
And it's just such a nice, like, hard song. And a lot of the songs I like of theirs feel like they could be on Three Cheers from Sweet Revenge. And it's like, it's also an album that, a very rare occasion for me, where I like every song from start to finish. There are a few I skip here and there at this point because, like, a lot of the times I'm like, I don't want to listen to The Ghost of You. That song's depressing. But
I'll wait my turn. But
oh yeah, but it's for me it's pretty much a perfect album, and there are very few other bands that I listen to, especially ones that are like my top 5. Like I think my top 5 bands, there's like only 3 of them that have an album where I like every single song, maybe even 2. So that like a song, every song on an album is always a big plus for me. And I'll stop gushing over My Chemical Romance now.
Did you have anything to say about any of these? Did you go through them all, Jake? I was just kind of lost track.
Those are the only ones that I really know. The rest of them, like, I was never big into Good Charlotte.
Yeah.
Kanye West, I've listened to like one album. I got halfway through it and was like, I have to stop because I'm gonna start liking Kanye West, and I can't do that to myself.
Yeah. So The Ghost of You is, as of right now, is my absolute favorite by My Chemical Romance. I think it's perfect. And then really, like, as far as the emo scene of, you know, the early and mid 2000s, I wasn't super into it at the time, and like halfway through the 2010s, I started to really regret that. Like, I really wish I had been into it at the time. Instead, I was just listening to old shit that hadn't even been cool in like 20 years, if it was even cool when it came out. And I was just kind of being goofy and ironic and sarcastic, I guess. But so anyway, halfway through the 2010s, I started going back to that period and really just sitting down listening to it more. And I was just like, wow, I really missed out. And I'm sure there's somebody listening to this now being like, yo, dude, you did the opposite. Like, as you got older, you're supposed to realize how that shit is cringy. But I'm like, you know, we'll go.
That's the thing with it too. Is like a lot of those bands, like specifically My Chemical Romance, Fall Out Boy, and Panic at the Disco. I've never liked Fall Out Boy. They're just not really my thing. Like they have good songs here and there. I used to really love Dance Dance by them, but the rest I'm just kind of like, I can take it or leave it. Panic at the Disco, it's like every other album for me I like. Kind of, sort of. Or it's like I miss one and then another one comes out and I'm like, when did this happen? But there's a lot of stuff in there that like is super cringy that you just cannot listen to. Like, I would say the closest band that I used to like to My Chemical Romance was Hawthorne Heights.
Mm-hmm.
I tried re-listening to that like 5 years ago, and I was like, oh my god, this is awful. Because it's like whiny vocals and undercut by screamo vocals, and it's just like,
like,
give me a headache, and just stab me in the face.
Ohio is for Lovers, like the one lyric where it's like, so cut my teeth and bite my eyes, or something like that.
That was the one album of theirs that I never listened to. The next one I did, but like still, it was just like, whew.
There's a great YouTube comment where it's like, if you didn't give yourself an angry hand job to this album, you didn't live. But yeah, it's just like, so yeah, with My Chemical Romance, like Ghost of You, it's a great music video too, where it's like they're basically doing Saving Private Ryan, and then the college dropout by Kanye West, like that trilogy, the school trilogy, I guess you could call it, where it's like the college dropout, late registration, and then graduation. Like, that was when people talk about like, I miss the old Kanye, or you know, they're talking about that Kanye West. And yeah, it's just, I remember that was the year. Well, I mean, this was his first, you know, big album or whatever. I don't know if he released anything prior, but Dave Chappelle had him on as a musical guest. And he has a story of when they're all like in the green room just hanging out and stuff and waiting on like dailies or whatever. And Kanye West gets a phone call on the flip phone, and he answers it. And I'm like, oh, hey, is one of his buddies. And he's just like, oh, hey, what's up? And like, just immediately, like people are like, oh, what happened to Kanye West? No, he was always like that. You're just starting to see him more and more. And immediately he became whatever he is. Like, it's just like there was just no transition for him. It's just like, I'm hanging out with Dave Chappelle and Common doing dope shit because I'm dope and I do dope shit. And he just hangs up.
Yep.
And Dave Chappelle was like, who the fuck is this guy? And then,
to be fair, if I was in his possession, I probably would have said the same thing.
Yeah, that's fair. And then Yeah by Usher. Yeah, it's just, that'll be stuck in all of our heads until the end of time. And then, Unwritten by Natasha, whatever. Like, if you want to talk about cringy, like,
Was that a song?
Oh, you've heard it. If I were to play right now,
Probably.
you'd be like, oh, that song.
Because there is a song by her that I like. It's that song Bubbly.
No. And then Somewhere Only We Know by Keen. That I remember that was in like all the trailers and commercials for the Lake House with Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock, and it was just like it just played perfectly with the backdrop. And yeah, the other ones I threw in there, I don't have too much to say on them. I just threw them in there. Maybe just you and Donnie would have an opinion on them, but yeah, I think as far as like the year 2004 with music, we really said the main stuff. Yeah, I don't want to drag us out anymore. Donnie, you can come back.
I'm back. All right, well, I think we covered the year 2004 quite well, guys. I want to thank you guys for joining me tonight. I want to thank everybody for listening tonight. Thanks for joining us tonight, Jake. Again,
Yeah, of course.
You can find Jake on Twitter at KangaShark. You can also find him on Twitch at KangaShark. I am Don John. You can find me on Twitter at Don John Laughs, as well as Facebook at Don John Laughs. Blake?
Sorry. Yes, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram, etc. at Puka Saucy, hashtag Puka Saucy. And I should have even more quote artwork coming out later this month.
And if you tuned in late for this episode or just missed it entirely, we will be on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts within the next day or two. So on that note, thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for joining me tonight. Have fun, be good, and be safe.
And vote. Good night.
Yes. Good night.